Chapter 94. Shortly after the establishment of the 9 Regions Intelligence Taxation Administration, the first 5 leaders left the Marquis County overnight. The reason was very simple. As the base of the sect, Marquis County had too many congenital defects. First, the attitude of the county's officials and people toward the immortal cultivation sect was relatively cold. For example, the 7 Stars sect could be regarded as a relatively influential sect in the nearby area, but they couldn't wantonly develop believers in the county. They could only barely occupy the county magistrate's courtyard. Even the dirty old man, He Yun, who was a 6 Stars elder, had to pay the bill if he wanted to play with a woman. Cultivators simply couldn't be lawless here, and they didn't even have many privileges. Marquis County, as the ancient battlefield against the wild beasts, had a very deep heritage. Second, Marquis County, as the starting base, was relatively too conspicuous. If they wantonly levied IQ tax here, not only would it attract pressure from the Great Ming country, it was also bound to encounter resistance from the 7 Star sect. Third, they lacked the necessary network. Whether it was the dirty old man or Wu Feihua, they were just passers-by who were stationed here for a short period of time. They didn't have their own forces in the county, let alone Wang Lu and the others. With these several factors superimposed, leaving became an inevitable choice. Then, where would the 9 Regions Intelligence Taxation Administration be based? The answer was actually obvious. My dear Dog-Ear Mountain, I'm back. Facing the early morning sun, the chief of the 9 Regions Intelligence Taxation Administration, or the Wisdom sect leader Wang Lu, stood at the foot of the Dog-Ear Mountain, smugly and loudly laughed. Are you sure you want to start developing your force in this wilderness? The Wisdom sect's holy maiden, Fengling, very puzzledly asked. It's completely inconsistent with your ambition to dominate the 9 regions. The fatty also began to complain, Senior brother, why are we always in the wilderness? The living conditions are too hard. Sect leader Wang Lu humphed and said, if we don't look for this wilderness and go directly to the capital of the Eastern Wei Prefecture, it would be strange if people don't shit on us. Although we have the Lingjian school behind us, we don't have people, we don't have money, we're an out-and-out grassroots sect. Moreover, I should have told you that a single spark can start a prairie fire. The path we are taking is called the rural encirclement of the city. The development of grassroots sects generally follows this path. If they succeed in the future, their future is limitless. What's more, the Wang family village had a unique advantage. Rich spiritual energy, which could easily trigger miracles. It could provide great assistance to the initial development of the sect. In the future, when the scale grew, it could even be used as a revolution. Oh no, a holy land for immortals. In fact, it has more advantages than those bustling cities. One of the 6 Star perverts beside him heaved a long sigh. Director General is far-sighted and far-sighted. His words hit the nail on the head. In the past, when I was at the 7 Star sect's main altar, the sect leader gathered all of our 6 Stars elders to discuss the layout of the Wang family village. The plan that we painstakingly came up with is more or less like this. Moreover, there are many places that are not as thorough as the deputy director. Wang Lu nodded with a smile. You are very sensible. My promotion of you was not in vain. Work hard, and there will be many benefits for you in the future. The dirty old man immediately expressed his gratitude. I will never forget Director's great kindness. Even if my body is smashed to pieces, it would be difficult to repay it. What a loyal and devoted old servant face. It was hard to imagine that just a day ago, the two of them were diametrically opposed to each other. It was even more difficult to imagine that a foundation establishment stage cultivator would willingly submit to a low-level chi cultivating stage youth. This was the skill of a leader. As a leader, he didn't need to be more powerful than the others. As long as he could lead the team and let them exert their labor force to the limit, that would be the victory. On the way here, I have already clearly explained what you should do. You and Feihua can do it with peace of mind. The Wang family village has the foundation of the 7 Star sect, so it won't be difficult to take it down. The dirty old man nodded, and his complexion turned serious. Rest assured, Deputy Director, this is the first battle after Feihua and I abandoned the dark for the light. There will be no mistakes. I wish you success. With that, Wang Lu patted the dirty old man's shoulder, turned around, and went down the mountain. The dirty old man and Wu Feihua looked at each other and smiled. They each launched their respective spells and floated down from the top of the mountain toward the Wang family village. The Wang family village on the Dog Ear Mountain was originally a comfortable and peaceful village in the Marquis County. It was rich in products, simple and unsophisticated, just like a paradise. However, in recent years, a lot of changes had taken place in the village. The people's hearts gradually became violent, and the smile that often hung on the villagers' faces became increasingly rare. Instead, it was replaced by a kind of insatiable hunger and resentment. The village was filled with restless hostility. Early in the morning, more than a dozen villagers gathered in a dilapidated wooden house. There were young hunters, strong blacksmiths, and a few indignant peasant women. These people entered the house one after another and greeted each other. However, their voices were filled with a deep exhaustion. "Brother Zhang, your face looks so ugly." "Ah, Xueqi, aren't you the same? Sister-in-law Wang, you haven't slept for a while, right?" "Yes, every night, when I close my eyes, I have nightmares. I always dream of a grotesque devil. When I wake up, I'm covered in cold sweat and can't sleep at all." "AI, it seems like everyone is like this." "That's right. Who in the village could sleep soundly these days?" "It's all because of that little devil." Not long ago, Wang Lu killed 2 7-star sex cultivators and a publicity envoy. Since then, many villagers have fallen into panic. They were worried that Wang Lu, this devil, would harm the whole village, and they were also worried that the 7-star sex Taoist immortals would punish the village. That little devil is really hateful. Not only did he cut off our immortal fate, but he also caused such a big disaster. AI, the whole village is going to be implicated by him. Yes, I heard from the people in the county that in a village, there's a kid who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He disrespected the Taoist immortals, and as a result, the whole village died of a sudden illness overnight. No one survived. That can't be. These 2 days, I've been feeling a headache. Could it be? When the crowd heard this, they immediately panicked. "I don't think we can wait any longer." A village woman very high profile said, "That little devil offended the Taoist immortals of the 7-star sect, so in the future, he will die a horrible death. But for no reason, we're implicated by him. What's going on?" "Then what do you think we should do? What else can we do? Didn't we already discuss this a few days ago? We should capture that little devil's family and apologize to the Taoist immortals of the 7-star sect." "Wang Fugui? He hasn't done anything evil in these past few years, so it's not good for us to make a move on him. Isn't it enough to give birth to a son who is worse than a pig and a dog?" The village woman screamed, "Don't tell me you want everyone to be implicated by him." "Sister-in-law Lu, what are you talking about? Aren't I also implicated by him? I just think that with that little devil here, it's not that easy to capture his parents. Moreover, didn't Xueqi oppose it before?" At this time, a scholarly-looking villager sneered and said, "Xueqi is kind-hearted? What a joke. How can you be sure that Xueqi isn't confused by the devil? The 7-star sex Taoist immortals and ambassador were killed by the devil that day, so why did he leave Wang Xueqi alive? In these 2 days, that devil isn't here, so this is a rare opportunity. Why would Wang Xueqi stop us from protecting Wang Fugui's family?" As soon as these words came out, the room immediately quieted down, and an even more violent mood quickly brewed. At this time, a burst of exclamation came from outside the room. "Taoist immortals! Taoist immortals are here!" Everyone in the room was surprised. "Taoist immortals are here?" They hastily pushed the door open and saw a mass of pink gauze covering 2 cultivators in the sky. Like an auspicious cloud that descended from the sky, they slowly descended under the eyes of more and more onlookers. These 2 people were naturally the dirty old man and Wu Feihua. The place where they landed was the open space in the middle of the village. After the 2 of them landed, they were quickly surrounded by dozens of people. With all kinds of complex eyes, they focused on them and talked about them. "Are they the 7-star sex Taoist immortals?" "They don't look like it. I heard that the 7-star sex Taoist immortals would embroider stars on their lapel, but they don't." "Then who are they?" The dirty old man and Wu Feihua, at this time, kept in mind Wang Lu's exhortation and the self-cultivation of an actor. They turned a blind eye to the surrounding voices. They just frowned and looked around as if they were looking for something. Before long, a gray-haired old man tremblingly walked over. He was the Wang family village head, Wang Qinian. A few days ago, the chaos caused by Wang Lu in the village made him, the village head, unable to eat or sleep in peace. In just a few days, he seemed to have aged 20 years, and his originally steady pace had become unsteady. 2 Taoist immortals have come to our village. Our Wang family village. Sorry for not going out to greet you. Wang Qinian stuttered for a while before he was interrupted by Wu Feihua. What a heavy devil aura. Wang Qinian was startled. Taoist immortals were indeed Taoist immortals. With a glance, they could see that there was a devil doing evil here. Thinking of this, the old man quickly knelt to the ground. Taoist immortals, save us. Our village has recently been attacked by a devil. The whole village is in danger. However, before the old man's knees could touch the ground, he was propped up by an invisible force. The dirty old man, He Yun, waved his hand. Elder, please get up. We're here to subdue the devil. Wang Qinian was moved to tears. Thank you, Taoist immortals, for your great kindness. It's just that, the devil is very powerful, so Taoist immortals must be careful. A few days ago, the 7-star sect's Taoist immortals were injured by the devil. However, Wu Feihua frowned. 7-star sect? Isn't that a devil sect? Wang Qinian was stunned. Devil sect? The dirty old man, He Yun, opened his mouth and said, yes, that's right. The devil aura lingering here is from the 7-star sect. Heh, this group of dogs really can't stop eating shit. With that, the dirty old man raised his hand and shouted, purify. Suddenly, a mass of boundless green gas was spouted out from his mouth, which turned into a mass of green cloud in mid-air and then fell down from the sky, enveloping nearly 100 villagers. After being contaminated by the green gas, all of them felt that their bodies were relaxed. All the dirt was gone, and their whole body was full of energy. Immortal method. This is an immortal method? The villagers cried out in disbelief. Before this, although they had seen the 7-star sect's Taoist immortals display their immortal method, those Taoist immortal spells were far from this magical. Hearing the shouts from the surrounding people, the dirty old man inwardly laughed. Sure enough, they're all fools, making a fuss over a mere cleansing incantation. Wu Feihua was naturally amused, but her face was as calm as still water. Senior brother, your exorcism spell is really effective. This place is indeed polluted by the 7-star sect's devil aura. Yes, that exorcism spell is specifically for the 7-star sect's devil. Since the effect is so obvious, it's probably not bad. The two of them spoke in a professional tone, as if it was light and breezy, but it made the surrounding people's hair stand on end. Wang Qinian plucked up his courage and interjected, 2 Taoist immortals, just now you mentioned the 7-star sect. What exactly is it? The dirty old man righteously explained. The 7-star sect is a very famous devil sect in the Blue River region. They specialize in deceiving the common people, and are the public enemy of our righteous sects. Boom! Wang Qinian felt as if he was struck by lightning. Suddenly, he saw stars, and his chest was in severe pain, as if his heart was about to jump out of his chest. Devil sect. Despicable. Deceiving. Public enemy of the righteous sect. Each word was like a heavy hammer that struck the tip of his heart, making his chest feel suffocated. However, the next moment, a cool breath hit his face. He saw that charming female cultivator stretched out her jade-like fingers and released a pink mist, which relieved him of his myocardial infarction. Senior, don't be too anxious. If you have something to say, then say it slowly. Wang Qinian coughed a few times, but his mind was still in a mess. However, the surrounding villagers heard it clearly. After the infinite shock, they gradually regained their senses. Some villagers couldn't bear it anymore and boldly opened their mouth to ask. Taoist immortal, what you just said, is it true? Wu Feihua was somewhat unhappy. Do we need to lie to you? The dirty old man played the role of a kind elder. This is absolutely true. This 7-star sect has been stirring up trouble in the Blue River region, and the victims are countless. We, the righteous sect, have long wanted to crack down on them. Unfortunately, they come and go like ghosts, so we haven't been able to catch them. This time, my junior sister and I passed by this place and found that the devil chi here is astonishing, so we hurriedly came here. Unfortunately, we couldn't catch the 7-star sect. After hearing those words, all the villagers were stunned. They felt as if the whole world was collapsing in front of them, unable to be rebuilt. The Seven Stars sect was a liar? Devil sect? Public enemy of the righteous sect? How could it be possible? That was obviously a sect that could help everyone become an immortal. How could it be a liar? One of the villagers unwillingly asked, "May I ask, Taoist immortal? The Seven Stars sect said that everyone can become an immortal. Is that also false?" For a time, the square was particularly quiet. Everyone held their breath, waiting for the old immortal's answer. Of course, at this time, they didn't know what to do if the old immortal said no. However, they still had to ask. "Oh, everyone can become an immortal. This is, of course, true," the dirty old man said without batting an eyelid. The Seven Stars sect didn't lie on this issue. Phew! For a time, many people breathed a sigh of relief. However, that devil sect, let alone helping people become an immortal. Hee. The number of people who have been consigned to eternal damnation by them is simply too many to count. The villagers, who had just calmed down, suddenly tensed up again. Consigned to eternal damnation? Humph! The spirit root development pills and other medicines they use are all exceptionally cheap defective products. Moreover, they completely don't know how to use them. They only let people take them indiscriminately, and then buy new medicines at sky-high prices. If they take them like this, even a cultivator who has a chance to become an immortal would be destroyed by these poisons. Wu Feihua quietly added, "Actually, this is still considered good. Even if they eat something bad, it would only destroy their spirit root. However, sometimes, the Seven Stars sect, in order to cultivate their devil method, would even sacrifice the lives of ordinary people to refine their devil treasures. That is truly tragic." The dirty old man nodded. Yes, last month, they just launched the 10,000 spirits blood sacrifice on the eastern Sky Mountain. Within the radius of 100 miles, thousands of people were sacrificed. It's simply too horrible to look at. Yes, but their 10,000 spirits blood sacrifice is not complete. After it was launched, those villagers were half dead. Their bodies festered and melted, but they still couldn't die. They struggled for 7 days and 7 nights. Alas, that soaring resentment is actually a pleasant surprise. The two peoples back and forth scared the nearby villagers to the point that their faces turned pale. The village head, Wang Qinian, stammered, "Taoist immortal. That Seven Star sect has been staying here for 2 years. I don't know if there's that 10,000 spirits blood sacrifice." The dirty old man's complexion turned solemn. 2 years? They have been planning this for so long? Yes. The old village head was about to cry. "Taoist immortal, please save us." A moment later, the surrounding hundreds of villagers all knelt down. "Taoist immortal, please save us." The dirty old man raised his hand and simultaneously helped the surrounding villagers up. "Rest assured, since we're just passing by, we won't just stand by and watch the Seven Star sect's evil deeds. Village head, please take us to walk around the village. We want to carefully examine this place." "Very well. This old man will lead the way for the 2 Taoist immortals." The 2 Taoist immortals, followed by hundreds of villagers, slowly walked around the village. Before long, they arrived at the periphery of the graveyard behind the village. The two people looked at each other, and then Wu Feihua made a horrified expression. "What a strong death aura! What's going on here?" The dirty old man was also aghast. Is this an ancient battlefield? Such a strong death aura, at least 1 million people have died here? Boom! The villagers behind him were frightened. The dirty old man continued to frighten them. "No, this is not a normal accumulation of death aura. It's caused by a special array. My goodness, this is the gathering of the nearby spiritual energy along the feng shui line, which is then transformed by the yin and yang array. Originally, this kind of artificial death aura lacks activity, but the Seven Stars sect designed this array, which is stimulated by the Wang family village's yang energy. Once the death aura erupts, within a radius of thousands of miles, not even a blade of grass will grow. However, this buried heavenly evil weapon will take shape. Using such a strong death aura to nurture a heavenly evil weapon. What kind of power would it have?" Wu Feihua lightly covered her mouth. She was extremely shocked. When did they bury such a deep thing? Probably because they were surrounded by the righteous sect and were forced into a dead end. However, if this heavenly evil weapon really succeeds, it will stir up trouble in the future, which will give us a big headache. Wu Feihua clenched her teeth. Senior brother, if we work together, we should be able to break this yin and yang life and death array, right? At most, there's only a 40% chance. However, if we wait any longer, the death aura may erupt at any time. Fortunately, our divination today was different, so we specifically came here to inspect. Finally, we came in time. Good, junior sister. Let's do it. While speaking, the dirty old man's eyes turned sharp, and he loudly shouted, "Reveal yourself." Bas! A black sky curtain suddenly appeared in everyone's line of sight, like a dark cloud that blotted out the sky. Under the sky curtain, there were layers upon layers of ghostly shadows. Countless vengeful spirits and malicious spirits were forced to reveal themselves by the Taoist immortal's incantation and ran around. How could the nearby villagers have ever seen such a vision? For a time, they thought that the end of the world was coming, so they cried for their parents. The dirty old man and Wu Feihua looked at each other and smiled. This yin and yang life and death array and this dark sky curtain were naturally their masterpieces. With low-level foundation establishment and high-level qi cultivating stage cultivation, it was somewhat strenuous to activate this kind of illusion technique. However, if they added the high-rank spirit stones provided by Wang Lu, then it would be a different story. However, even so, with their cultivation, they couldn't hold on for long. According to the script, it was time for them to take the next step. Senior brother, this life and death array is really powerful. We can't even suppress it. Even if we can't suppress it, we still have to suppress it. Now that hundreds of ghosts have appeared, if we don't suppress it, the death energy will erupt, and you and I will die without a burial place. But, I really can't hold on. Even if you can't hold on, you still have to. And I know. Junior sister, if the intensity of the death energy doesn't decrease, you have to run away by yourself. How can I leave you behind? If we die together. Amidst their hoarse roars, the two of them became more and more engrossed in their acting. The hearts of the villagers behind them became colder and colder. Under the stunned eyes of the people, a pretty girl came out from the broken black curtain. Her delicate eyebrows were slightly twisted, revealing a bit of dissatisfaction. Hey, you two, what are you doing? The dirty old man and Wu Feihua survived a disaster. With cold sweat on their foreheads, they were stunned on the spot. A moment later, they hurriedly knelt down. Greetings, Saintess. Chapter 95. Greetings, Miss Holy Maiden. Facing the sudden appearance of this pretty girl, the dirty old man and Wu Feihua, after regaining their composure, did not hesitate to kneel down. Humph, you two are really something. You actually dared to break the 7-star sect's yin-yang life and death array. No matter what, it's a sect leader level array. If you can break it, I'll invite you to be the sect leader, okay? The dirty old man and Wu Feihua simultaneously apologized. Subordinates were thoughtless and overestimated themselves, which almost led to a disaster. Miss Holy Maiden, please punish us. Humph, forget it. In any case, nothing bad happened. You two just need to remember this lesson. Doing good deeds is a good thing, but overestimating yourself is not good. The two quickly nodded, and then the dirty old man asked, Miss Holy Maiden, why did you come here? The girl said, of course I was instructed to come here. Someone divined that there might be a disaster here, so he asked me to come and see the situation. I didn't expect it to be you two idiots. Wu Feihua explained, my senior brother and I also divined and found out that there's an amazing change here. So, Humph, when you divined, didn't you also divine yourselves? Not to mention that there's really a change. Can the two of you cope with it? Forget it. I'm not going to argue with you. I'll break the rest of the array first. With that, the girl with a hurried look lifted her leg and walked away. Her movement technique was surprisingly fast. With one step, she appeared dozens of meters away, and with another flash, she completely disappeared. After a while, from the corner of the village, a burst of ghostly cries, accompanied by the broken black light curtain, made people's hair stand on end. At this time, the villagers who had just recovered from the horror of life and death boldly asked, two Taoist immortals, just now, that fairy, the dirty old man wryly smiled. She's our sect's holy maiden. Her status is venerated, and her immortal method is superb. If it weren't for Miss Holy Maiden's arrival today, all of us would have died without a burial place. When these words came out, The villagers' eyes that were looking at the distant place suddenly became incomparably awestruck. Then the saintess is here, we. Village chief Wang Qinian was at a loss, his heart pounding. The dirty old man said, "Old man, you don't have to be afraid. The holy maiden has never paid much attention to unnecessary etiquette. Although she is sometimes impatient, she is actually a very warm and kind person. You don't have to pay special attention to her. Furthermore, the saintess is very busy. After dealing with the yin-yang life and death array, she will probably leave in half a day." "Ah, you're leaving so soon?" Wang Qinian and the others were taken aback. How can we do that? On one hand, he was reluctant to part with his savior. On the other hand, it was rare for a true immortal to pass by. If he just let him go like this, it seemed. The dirty old man sighed and said, "The saintess has a venerable status, but there are many things to do. In any case, it's impossible for her to stay in one place for a long time. At least we can thank the saintess for saving our lives." The dirty old man still wanted to persuade them, but Wu Feihua had already put on a dark face. Eating local specialties in your Wang family village is likely to mean that other places like the Zhang family village or the Li family village will be harmed by the seven-star sect. When that time comes, do you think you can compensate for hundreds of people's lives? With such a big accusation, no one dared to speak. However, at this time, they heard a burst of hearty laughter. "Ha ha ha, how could she leave so quickly? Other people will take care of the other things. Our saintess is not a firefighter. I sent her here to fight for a long time." While talking, the protagonist of this drama finally appeared. It was an ordinary-looking, medium stature, and nothing special about a young man. He looked about 17 or 18 years old. However, the vicissitudes of life in his eyes were like an old man's, which formed a great contrast with his relaxed smile, making people unable to tell his exact age. Who was he? For a time, this became the doubt in the hearts of most of the villagers. In fact, this young man was naturally Wang Lu in disguise. Moreover, he didn't spend too much time on this disguise. It was nothing more than a slight change of bone shape, and then a makeup technique to change the details. At least, this disguise was much simpler than Wang Lu's disguise. Moreover, this disguise didn't appear frequently, so there was no need to elaborate it. Today's appearance was nothing more than to set off another climax in this big drama. Through layers upon layers of methods, he would explode the climax to the extreme, exploding this group of brainless villagers out of their wits and at a loss as to what to do. This way, it would be convenient for the next step of brainwashing. And Wang Lu's appearance was undoubtedly successful. With a few words and a smiling face, he successfully attracted everyone's attention, leaving the villagers at a loss. However, among the more than 100 people, there were always those with sharp minds who captured the main point of that sentence. "I sent her here." After realizing the meaning of this sentence, those smart people suddenly felt their vision go black. Their worldview, which had been repeatedly damaged, was once again shaken. There were signs of a head exploding. Of course, there were also some stubbornly unshakable people. "Who do you think you are? How dare you talk to an immortal like that?" This impatient and slow-witted boor subconsciously roared. But just as he finished roaring, he saw two pairs of cold and awe-inspiring eyes staring at him. The dirty old man and Wu Feihua, these two true immortals, were glaring at him. Suddenly he fell to the ground, and a warm liquid flowed out from between his legs. For a mere mortal, being stimulated by the divine sense of high-level qi cultivating stage and low-level foundation establishment stage cultivators, it was natural for him to wet his pants. After displaying their immortal means, the two of them respectfully knelt down on one knee in front of the floating teenager, just like what was written in the script. "Greetings, cult leader." Boom. The dirty old man and Wu Feihua's kneeling really scared the villagers. "Greetings, cult leader." This was actually the arrival of the cult leader. No matter how ignorant the villagers were, they also knew what the word cult leader meant. For the villagers, it was probably a more terrifying existence than the emperor. It was simply unimaginable. Since they couldn't imagine it, they could only freeze on the spot. Wang Lu inwardly sneered. Sure enough, they were a group of fools who deserved to pay the IQ tax. Previously, even the 7 Stars sect's shoddy scam was able to deceive them. Now that they met with professional means, naturally, they had no resistance. Although he was inwardly contemptuous, Wang Lu displayed his self-cultivation as an actor and still acted very realistically. What are you paying respects for? How could there be so many rules? Wang Lu smiled and waved his hand. The two people naturally made an invisible force lifting posture, and respectfully stood to the side. The dirty old man and Wu Feihua's realistic performance once again shocked the villagers, deepening their awe of Wang Lu, the cult leader. However, things were not over yet. Because of the previous appearance of a certain holy maiden, the dirty old man and Wu Feihua's status among the villagers had dropped a lot. Therefore, not long after, the holy maiden, who was dealing with the remnants of the yin-yang life and death array, appeared on the scene. Hey, cult leader, why are you here? Didn't you say you have something important to deal with? I'm just worried about you. No matter what, it's still a cult leader level array. In case you're killed by the explosion, I can at least come here to burn some incense for you. Damn! What kind of attitude is this? Considerate, meticulous attitude of a superior toward his subordinate. Speaking of which, recently, you didn't even kneel down to greet me, which made me suffer a blow. Tell me honestly, do you want to usurp my position? Usurp your sister. Although the girl said that, she still reluctantly saluted Wang Lu, but she quickly added a grimace. This kind of lively dialogue was naturally for others to see. Although in theory, a dignified and dignified leader with an unshakable hierarchy was more suitable to control a group of ignorant people. But first of all, with this group of amateurs in his hands, he was afraid that it would backfire on him. At the very least, if he made the lady boss kneel down respectfully to him, he would just have to wait for his portrait to be hung on the wall. Secondly, Wang Lu didn't intend to walk the path of a conventional sect. If he really wanted to walk it, he might as well borrow the dirty old man's identity to put on the 7-star sect shell. However, he really didn't like the 7-star sect. Since he was determined to run a sect, if he didn't come up with something new, then he would be unworthy of his professional adventurer title. Therefore, this time, he put on a big show to smash the 7-star sect's set of deceit. Then, he would let these foolish villagers see the power of the IQ tax bureau. Sure enough, seeing that this immortal sect leader didn't put on an unreachable air, some people's hearts began to move. Dear immortals! Wang Qinian once again played the role of the village chief, mustering up the courage to speak for the villagers at the critical moment. However, before he could speak, Wang Lu had already interrupted him and said, "The Wang family village is a treasured land of feng shui. When I wandered down to the mortal dimension, I found this place to be the most suitable place to establish an altar. Unfortunately, my time in the mortal dimension has come to an end today and I have no choice but to return to the immortal dimension. I'll come back again when I need to establish an altar in the future." After he finished speaking, he disappeared in a flash, causing the old village chief to choke on his words. Then, he heard Wu Feihua sigh. Has Cult Master ascended to the immortal world again? The dirty old man gently nodded with a face full of reverence. You're worthy to be a person from the immortal world. You come and go without a trace. You're like a dragon that shows its head but not its tail. The saintess was speechless. Weren't these two people too engrossed in their acting? What's more, it's like a mysterious dragon showing its head but not its tail. You were the one who used invisibility to hide Wang Lu. He's still watching the show from my side. However, only by acting realistically could you win people's trust. Sure enough, upon hearing the words ascended to the immortal world, Wang Qinian was even more aghast. Cult Master, he's actually a Taoist immortal? Although as early as the 7-star sect, the people of the Wang family village affectionately called them Taoist immortals, they actually knew that they were just cultivators, not real immortals. However, even if they were cultivators, they were still 17 or 18 levels higher than mortals, so they eagerly fawned on them. But looking at the current situation, there was actually an immortal? However, when he thought about it carefully, it didn't seem too unbelievable. The dirty old man and Wu Feihua, these two Taoist immortals, were already amazing. Later on, the saintess was even stronger than them. Finally, when the cult master personally came, even the saintess had to bow down to him. Wang Qinian only needed to think about these layers of progressive relationships, and it was not difficult for him to come to a conclusion. If he was not a real Taoist immortal, how could he subdue these several great cultivators before him? The dirty old man also laughed. Of course, Cult Master is a real Taoist immortal. Unfortunately, the Cult Master is still in the immortal world, and it takes a long time before he can descend to the lower realm. Every time he descends to the lower realm, he still needs to condense his body, which is not easy.
For you to be able to see him, I don't know how many generations of good fortune you have cultivated.
The villagers hastily echoed his words and kowtowed. At this time, it was the old village head, Wang Qinian, who displayed his unique wisdom. Just now I heard from Cult Master that the Wang family village is a feng shui treasure land. I don't know, the dirty old man explained. The surrounding spiritual energy here is rich, which is an excellent place for cultivation. The Seven Stars sect also fancied this place's spiritual energy, so they set up the yin-yang life and death array, which turned the spiritual energy into dead energy, and then stimulated it with the village's vitality. This kind of place is rare in the entire 9 regions.
Unfortunately, that devil's sect, the Seven Star sect, found this treasure land, but they only wanted to destroy it to refine their devil treasure. How short-sighted they are.
Regarding the surrounding spiritual energy and devil treasure, Wang Qinian naturally didn't know much, but he knew that a huge opportunity was right in front of him. Thinking about what the cult master just said about setting up the altar, the old man's heart couldn't stop pounding.
Thinking back to the time when the Seven Star sect was still around, the villagers fawned on those publicity ambassadors and cultivators in every possible way.
They even built a courtyard for them, but they could only let them stay here for a while and occasionally preach. Of course, now it seemed that everything was very reasonable. They originally planned to blow up the mountain, so how could they possibly stay here for a long time? However, if this wisdom sect set up an altar here, then it was simply, Senior Taoist Immortal, may I ask what exactly is the matter with the altar that Cult Master just said? The so-called altar is to condense the scattered surrounding spiritual energy and transform it into elixirs, spirit stones, and other things, which are convenient for cultivators to cultivate. However, the Cult Master just casually said that the establishment of the altar is likely to change the direction of the surrounding spiritual energy and affect the feng shui. At least, it needs the consent of the local people. Wang Qinian, of course, agreed. He nodded again and again. Taoist Immortal is the savior of our entire village. If there's a need, please feel free to do it. That being the case, Senior Holy Maiden, what do you think? What else could the Holy Maiden think? After she finished her part of the play, she was already bored. If you guys want to do it, then do it. The dirty old man was suddenly stunned, thinking, Senior Holy Maiden, why don't you act according to common sense? The script isn't written like this. You should be more enthusiastic, more excited.
However, the dirty old man was indeed worthy to be a former professional swindler. His on-the-spot response was extremely fast.
With Senior Holy Maiden's approval, I think we can get twice the result with half the effort. Fei Hua and I will go and prepare the materials first. In 2 days, we will come here to set up the altar. Chapter 96. After the Wisdom Sect people left the Wang family village, the village immediately turned into a mess. Several hundred people in the village came out in full force, surrounding the village head's house, clamoring incessantly. In just half a day, too many things happened in the Wang family village, causing this group of inexperienced villagers to fall into great chaos. In this chaos, they naturally needed a guide to point out the right path. Who else could this guide be other than Wang Qinian? Village head, why did you agree to build the altar so quickly? Didn't they say it would affect the change in the surrounding spiritual energy? This is obviously our thing, why should we give it to them? Moreover, if it changes, would it affect us? A witty young man in the village raised his question. Wang Qinian turned his head and scolded, Stupid! What is the surrounding spiritual energy? Do you know it? Can you use it? Those devils from the Seven Star sect have affected a lot of surrounding spiritual energy in the past 2 years. Have you felt it? Have you shortened your lifespan? That's the Taoist Immortal's business. Why do you need to worry about it? Who do you think you are? Being scolded like a dog's blood, the young man immediately shrank back, but obviously, he was still somewhat unconvinced. Wang Qinian sighed and said, Not to mention, they have saved our lives. If it weren't for the Wisdom Sect's Taoist Immortals, our Wang family village would have died without a burial ground. At that time, you people didn't see that overwhelming number of dead souls and wild ghosts. No need to mention how scary it was. Receiving their kindness, yet you still have the nerve to ask them for conditions? After hearing those words, many of the villagers' faces turned red. However, there were also some who, in the past 2 years, had practiced their thick skin, so they didn't think much of it. In any case, the Taoist Immortals made their move, so why would they need to remember such a big favor? Although Wang Qinian was old, His mind was very clear.
From the corner of his eyes, he knew what some people were thinking. He couldn't help but coldly snort.
If you don't remember other people's kindness, at least remember other people's means. Right now the Taoist immortals are willing to talk to you, but if they're not, then I don't need to say anything. The old village head's sneer was like a threat, which made everyone's heart calm down. When everyone was well behaved, Wang Qinian said, 2 years ago, we were deceived by that devil sect, the 7-star sect. Fortunately, the immortals of the wisdom sect came to our rescue, so it didn't lead to a disaster. The wisdom sect's immortals have taken a fancy to the surrounding spiritual energy in our Wang family village, so they plan to build an altar here. In my opinion, this is a good thing. First, we can repay him for saving our lives. Second, if the altar can be successfully built, it will be a great opportunity for our village. Some villagers were puzzled. What fortuitous encounter! Wang Qinian smiled and said, of course it's the opportunity to become an immortal. Someone below hesitated and said, isn't that what the devil cult said to deceive people? They keep saying that everyone can become an immortal, but after staying in our village for 2 years, other than setting up a few yin-yang life and death arrays, no one has become an immortal. Although Xiaohu has become their disciple, I don't think he has any great skills. These words were the heartfelt words of many villagers. The 7-star sect scam had been exposed, and along with it, the theory that everyone could become an immortal collapsed. This was a big blow to the countless villagers who were thirsty for immortal cultivation. How could Wang Qinian's heart not be stimulated? Originally, he thought that he could use the immortal method to prolong his lifespan. Moreover, after 2 years of business, after paying a lot of price, he did manage to get the publicity envoys promised to help him. However, after the 7-star sect's true colors were exposed, his original investment naturally went down the drain.
However, the old man had a new idea. The 7-star sect, that devil sect, is a heinous sect, but I think their theory that everyone can become an immortal is not bad. Otherwise, why would they make up such a reason to deceive us? This statement was tantamount to deceiving themselves, but it was very popular. As soon as he said that, the people around him echoed in agreement. That's right, although the devils of the devil cult deserve to die, they said that everyone can become an immortal. I think they're not wrong. Those devils have committed heinous crimes, yet they can cultivate magic, so why can't we? One by one, not long after, the villagers firmly believed in becoming an immortal. Wang Qinian said with a smile, however, on the road to immortality, there must always be someone to guide us. The devils of the devil cult naturally won't help us, and those ordinary immortal cultivation sects probably won't look at us, the villagers. However, I think the wisdom sect's Taoist immortals are different. Someone asked, then should we go ask them to teach us immortal cultivation? Wang Qinian coldly humphed. You're not related to them, why should they teach you? That's why I said that building the altar is a big opportunity. When the altar is built, don't the wisdom sect's Taoist immortals need to look after it? Don't they need manpower to look after it? Don't they need to live here? Don't they need to take care of their daily life? Not to mention, I heard that after the altar is built, there will be an endless supply of spirit stones and elixirs. When the time comes, as long as the Taoist immortals reveal a little bit, it would be enough for our village to benefit endlessly. Therefore, speaking to this, Wang Qinian's expression turned serious. The wisdom sect's Taoist immortals building the altar is a big deal for our Wang family village. If anyone dares to cause trouble and drag us down in this matter, he will be the enemy of the entire village, without a doubt. Look at what you're saying. Who dares to make trouble in this matter? That's right, village head. You don't trust us too much. When the time comes, as long as there's a need, we won't hesitate to go through water and tread on fire. Just when everyone was about to declare their military pledge, suddenly, a sigh came from the crowd. That child Wang Lu. What should we do? The atmosphere suddenly turned cold. Wang Qinian sighed. That child Wang Lu. We've wronged him. I heard from Wang Fuguwei that Wang Lu has returned to the mountain, so he probably won't see him again. Then he no longer said anything. No one said anything. A few days ago, the villagers regarded Wang Lu as an evildoer and a devil, so they gnashed their teeth in hatred. Wang Qinian, as the village head, even went to Wang Fuguwei's house and sternly reprimanded and threatened him. Now that the 7-star sect scam was exposed,
Their previous hatred suddenly became extremely embarrassing. However, at this moment what could they say? After a while, Wang Qinian said, "In Wang Fugui's house, let's all go and apologize together, lest that child Wang Lu comes back and causes any trouble." Hi, I just don't know what his so-called Lingjian school is. Thinking of the roar in Wang Fugui's house a few days ago, Wang Qinian's heart was extremely uneasy. At the same time, on the Dog-Ear Mountain outside the Wang family village, the leadership of the Wisdom sect held a plenary meeting. According to Wang Lu's idea, the 9 Regions Intelligence Tax Administration Bureau would act in the name of Wisdom sect, and the high-level meeting would be held in the name of Intelligence Tax Administration Bureau. Wang Lu, you said you want to set up an altar here. Is this for real? Among the several people, only the Holy Maiden dared to call him by his name. Wang Lu didn't mind. He nodded and said, "Of course it's for real. In any case, this is a formal sect. How could we not have an altar?" The Holy Maiden was curious. "Do you know how to build an altar?" The dirty old man and Wu Feihua were also quite curious. An altar was not a rare thing.
In the Wanxian League, there were thousands of sects, big or small, and basically all of them had their own altar.
An altar could condense the surrounding spiritual energy and transform it into an infinite magical effect. It was a first-class practical facility, and also one of the foundations of a sect's cultivation.
However, such a simple thing like the 7-star sect, which could be considered as a rising sect in the lower 9 sects, no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't build it.
An altar seemed simple, but the requirement of skill and cultivation was astonishingly high. Although the 7-star sect leader was a Shudon stage cultivator, no matter what, he couldn't build a qualified altar. At present, the entire 7-star sect relied on their many years of savings. They bought a broken boat from the mysterious Sky Mansion and used the 5-element spirit array on the boat to gather the surrounding spiritual energy. The conversion rate wasn't high, and the things that could be converted were also very limited. This had already made many other sects endlessly envious. A regular altar, they didn't even dare to think about it. And Wang Lu, although he came from a famous sect, after all, he had only been cultivating for 2 years. His cultivation was still at the low-level Qi cultivating stage, so how could he possibly know how to build an altar? Then they heard Wang Lu sneer. "You guys underestimate the top student of Spirit Sword sect too much." While speaking, Wang Lu took out a book from his mustard seed bag, Basic Altar Principles, written by Lu Li, and then began to read it page by page. Holy Maiden Fengling almost spurted out blood. You want to learn it on the spot?" Wang Lu sneered. "Learn on the spot? You're insulting the top student. Let me tell you, a real top student never has the concept of learning on the spot. I've done a preview a long time ago, and now I'm just reviewing it. This altar principle is at least a foundation establishment course, right? A long time ago, you haven't even completed the body forging stage. What's the use of learning this?" A top student never asks if it's useful or not. A top student only asks how many points are there for this course. You're simply abnormal. But, what's the use of just knowing the theory? Not to mention you've been learning this for a long time. I'm afraid you don't have enough time to sharpen your spear before the exam, right? Wang Lu's smile became even more contemptuous. With your IQ, you naturally can't understand the efficiency of a top student's intensive study before the exam. Very well, respected top student. How long do you want to do this intensive study before the exam? Wang Lu humphed. "Give me 2 minutes. With that, he flipped through the book and then closed it. "Okay, that's enough. You're just showing off, right? Originally, it's not that difficult.
For something like an altar, as long as you calculate the geological characteristics, choose the type of altar according to the formula, and prepare the basic materials, the remaining problem is how to establish the spiritual energy tide and form the spiritual energy cycle. More than 90% of the basic altar principles is about the spiritual energy tide, and I've already memorized this part by heart." The Holy Maiden frowned for a moment, and then she had to admit that she didn't understand what Wang Lu said. Because she didn't have the conditions to become an immortal cultivator, Fengling never delved into the theory of immortal cultivation. Her understanding of immortal cultivation was nothing more than the fragmentary knowledge that the people in her sect talked about. Once it involved the formal theory, she was at a loss. However, the dirty old man and Wu Feihua were different. Especially the dirty old man, who had participated in several attempts to establish the altar, and the successive failures made him have a profound understanding of this path. The establishment of the spiritual energy tide was indeed the most important thing. It could be said that everything else, such as the selection of materials, the matching of arrays, and the selection of auspicious days, were all for this goal. The establishment of the spiritual energy tide was also extremely difficult. At least, for a group of unorthodox cultivators, it was as difficult as ascending to the sky. For those Wanxian League sects, as long as they had a Taoist Master King pill, they could use the deep meditation method to control the surrounding spiritual energy and form the spiritual energy tide cycle. However, how could a dignified Taoist master associate with the Seven-Star sect? Not to mention that even if it was Taoist Master King pill, without the assistance of the Wanxian League's resources, it would not be easy for him to enter deep meditation. Then, with Wang Lu's mere qi cultivating stage cultivation base, how could he be compared with Taoist Master King pill? You don't need to worry about the specific operation. During this period of time, as long as you prepare the relevant materials, I'll do the rest. The dirty old man nodded to show his understanding. The establishment of the spiritual energy tide and the altar were the core techniques of any sect, so it was normal for Wang Lu to refuse to say it. However, how to prepare the materials? Of course, you're going to buy them. In any case, you're the local bully of the Blue River region, so you can't even find a material dealer, right? While saying that, Wang Lu took out a pen and paper from his mustard seed bag, scribbled a list, and then threw it to the dirty old man. According to this list, it won't cost much. The dirty old man took the list and looked at it. He immediately felt a mouthful of blood rushing up to his throat. 7th rank fine gold, 4th rank profound earth, 6th rank colored glass fire. Director, you're crazy. The nearby Wu Feihua's eyes widened. These things easily cost hundreds of spirit stones. How could we afford them? This time, it was Wang Lu's turn to be surprised. When you occupied a prefectural city, hundreds of thousands of spirit stones were nothing to you. But now, you can't even afford a few thousand spirit stones? The dirty old man immediately began to pour out his grievances. Hundreds of thousands of spirit stones are the sect's income, not our personal income. The sect's operating cost is high, and the sect leader and the several elders are desperately plundering, so in the end, there's not much that can be divided into my hands. Moreover, I also want to cultivate. The cost of elixirs is also not small, so I can't save up a few spirit stones. Wang Lu sighed. In short, we just don't have money. Okay, I'll pay for it first. Then he opened his mustard seed bag, and a sparkling and translucent jade stone came out, blinding everyone's eyes. These are all top-quality spirit stones. Even though the dirty old man had been plundering for many years in the name of the Seven-Star sect, he had never seen so many top-quality spirit stones. This kind of excellent quality spirit stone with rich spiritual energy reserve was equivalent to more than 10 ordinary spirit stones. Wang Lu casually revealed a little bit from his pocket, but it was already comparable to his past several years of accumulation. The Holy Maiden was also extremely surprised. The non-phase peak master and disciple had always been known for their poverty, so where did Wang Lu get so many spirit stones? Of course, it was from the sect's points. As the Spirit Sword sect's #1 disciple, Wang Lu was poor in everything except points. Take these 500 spirit stones and prepare the materials in 2 days. Then, we'll set up the altar in the Wang family village. Hey, no matter what, this is the headquarters of the Intelligence Revenue Service, so let's make it more beautiful. Chapter 97. 2 days later, dirty old man He Yun and Wu Feihua hurriedly rushed back to the Dog Ear Mountain. Their complexions were extremely ugly. The 500 spirit stones that Wang Lu gave was actually a lot more than what was needed for the purchase. Thus, it was only natural that the remaining part would be the errand fee for the two of them. Although Wang Lu didn't say it clearly, both of them thought that with the shrewdness of the director, his intention in giving such a generous amount of money must be obvious. However, when the two of them contacted the nearest merchant and were ready to purchase, they were ruthlessly ripped off. That merchant only glanced at the list and immediately quoted a price. 600 spirit stones. This was higher than the budget given by Wang Lu, so how could He Yun agree? However, the other party had already seen through He Yun's background. If he didn't want to buy, then so be it. How could He Yun dare not to buy? Wang Lu had set a time limit of 2 days. If he exceeded the time limit, he simply didn't dare to imagine the consequences.
Not to mention these miscellaneous materials, logically speaking, should be worth at most 300 spirit stones. How could the price increase so much? After asking around, he finally understood that these materials, if sold in the mysterious Sky Mansion, were naturally cheap. However, with He Yun's and Wu Feihua's status, they simply couldn't enter the mysterious Sky Mansion's door. Thus, this was equivalent to a black market transaction, so the price was naturally high. In desperation, He Yun and Wu Feihua had to bow their heads. After a long wrangling, the final transaction price was 500 spirit stones. This was tantamount to a wasted trip for the two of them. Their original fantasies of running an errand for a sky-high price had vanished into thin air. However, this was normal. The two of them were still criminals, so how could Wang Lu be so kind as to give them the opportunity to make a fortune? However, thinking about the altar that they were going to build, the two of them became spirited. They had been working hard for the Seven-Star sect for many years, but they had never enjoyed the benefits of an altar. Moreover, judging from the materials purchased this time, the director's ambition was lofty, and the altar that he wanted to build was quite good. Although with their knowledge, they still couldn't identify the specific type, but even if it was a 9th-rank altar, its power was far superior to the Seven-Star sect's second-hand wind-splitting shuttle's 5-element spirit array. Combined with the relatively rich spiritual energy in the Wang family village, they could condense at least 100 spirit stones every day. It didn't seem much, but in a year, it would be tens of thousands. Not to mention, condensing spirit stones was only one of the most inconspicuous functions of the altar. The only problem was, could this altar really be built? It's not that the dirty old man and the others looked down on Wang Lu. In fact, 2 days ago, after Wang Lu retrieved the sword of Mount Kuan from the village, in order to further establish his prestige, he fought with He Yun. Although he was a low-level foundation establishment cultivator, he still couldn't break through the opponent's 3-feet sword defense. Henceforth, there was no longer any contempt in his heart. It was just that. The disparity between low-grade Qi condensation and Tao Master King Pill was truly like the difference between heaven and earth. What exactly was he going to do with the tide of spiritual energy? On this clear autumn day, the weather turned cool, but the Wang family village was bustling with activity. The simple villagers decorated the village with lanterns and streamers to welcome the arrival of the immortals. There was even a couplet hanging at the entrance of the village. Although the writing was nonsensical, the enthusiasm of the villagers to welcome the arrival of a deity and guide was undeniable. In the midst of this enthusiasm, the comrades of the Intelligence Revenue Service, no, the Wisdom Sect's Taoist immortals floated on the auspicious clouds. This time, all the members of the Wisdom Sect were dispatched. The holy maiden Feng Ling took the lead, followed by the vice-sect leader He Yun and elder Wu Feihua. Finally, the last one was an unremarkable fatty. When Wang Qinian curiously asked, the holy maiden lightly said, "Oh, that's the strong man used to build the altar." The fatty burst into tears. In any case, he was a genuine cultivator of Spirit Sword sect, but his position in the Intelligence Revenue Service was not even as good as Wu Feihua. Fortunately, the so-called rank was basically nonsense. Whoever did it was just a word from the director. However, Wang Qinian and the others didn't dare to neglect this chubby strong man. After a while, they asked about his well-being. When had the fatty ever experienced this kind of situation? In the past, when he was the son of the state preceptor, although he was surrounded by a crowd of people, he was never surrounded by the villagers. In desperation, the fatty had no choice but to keep his mouth shut, which really gave him the image of a strong man. Under the welcome of the villagers, the group came to the predetermined location of the altar. Needless to say, the location was, of course, personally chosen by Wang Lu. It was the village head's house. This location was also a reward for Wang Qinian's ranting at Wang Fugui's house a few days ago. Wang Qinian didn't know about this. Seeing the several Taoist immortals stopped in front of his house, he curiously asked, "Excuse me, Taoist immortals, this is..." The holy maiden Feng Ling lightly said, "Building the altar." "Here." Feng Ling nodded. "Yes, the feng shui here is the best, so it's the best place to build the altar." Wang Qinian was immediately stunned. Then what about my house?" Feng Ling smiled. "Of course it's going to be demolished. It doesn't matter, I will let the strong man build a new home for you." But, Wang Qinian was still struggling, but before he could open his mouth, he heard the holy maiden smile. "Oh, you don't want to? It doesn't matter. Then we won't build it. Old pervert. Yun, let's go. The group of people turned around and left, which made Wang Qinian anxious. Taoist immortals, don't go, don't go. Just demolish it, just demolish it. Good, then let's do it.
Wait, there are still things in my house.
The holy maiden frowned. Oh, you're so troublesome. Sometimes you demolish it, and sometimes you don't. Can't you be a bit more reliable? Do you want us to wait here for you to slowly move? Wang Qinian was dumbfounded. He paused for a moment before he heard a villager behind him say, Village chief, didn't you say that the construction of the altar is a huge matter?
If anyone dares to drag us down, then... Wang Qinian cursed in his heart, but he still put on a smiling face. Demolish, demolish, demolish.
As soon as his voice fell, he heard a muffled rumbling sound. The dirty old man let out a low shout and simultaneously lit up 3 talismans in his hands, releasing a huge amount of magical power. In an instant, the village head's house was flattened. The many years of tamped brick walls, thick beams, neat tiles, were compressed into 2 palms thick layers in an instant, and then they sunk further into the ground until they were level with the ground. For a low-level foundation establishment cultivator, the effect of this spell could be described as amazing. The dirty old man smiled as he patted away the remnants of the talismans in his palm. He thought that thanks to Wang Lu, who gave him a few pages of the Immortal Cultivation ancient book, in just a few days of practice, the internal injuries that he suffered in the Marquis County were completely healed. His power was almost restored, and some of his subtle skills were even more refined. Although this Mount Tai pressing down was supported by the power of the talismans, it was released so quickly and its power was so exquisite that even at his peak, it was still beyond his power. Sure enough, after surviving a disaster, there would be good fortune later on. In just a few days, he had already made such progress. Flattering this kind of famous sex disciple really has endless benefits. Unfortunately, when he was in the 7-star sect, he didn't have that kind of opportunity. While the dirty old man was full of joy, the dust that filled the sky fell to the ground. Next to the flat ground, there was a large group of villagers with their jaws dropped to the ground, as well as the village head who wanted to cry but had no tears. The dirty old man chuckled. What do you think? Isn't the demolition beautiful? Wang Qinian replied with a trembling voice, Senior Immortal spell is superb. The demolition is beautiful, very beautiful. You have good eyesight. Rest assured, when the altar is built, I will ask a strong man to help you build a new house. It will be even more magnificent than this broken house. Of course, this was also Wang Lu's instruction, which meant that the Intelligence Revenue Service's work must be clear in rewards and punishments. Wang Qinian was ignorant for 2 years and had done all kinds of foolish things, so he should be punished. However, the old village head had been conscientious for decades. Even if he didn't have any meritorious deeds, he still put in a lot of hard work, so why should he be homeless? After the forced dismantling, the dirty old man moved his fingers and pinched out a technique. Inside his mustard seed bag, a mountain of materials piled up like a mountain flew out and arranged themselves into a circular array on the flat ground in an orderly manner. The amount of these materials and the arrangement had already been planned by Wang Lu. After the dirty old man finished arranging the materials according to the order, he suddenly stopped a certain spell. At the same time, in the middle of the circular array, an ordinary youth figure appeared. The dirty old man and the others immediately kowtowed. Greetings, sect leader. After the invisibility spell was lifted, Wang Lu fully displayed the self-cultivation of a professional actor. With an indifferent look, he waved his hand. Okay, no need to kowtow. My time in the lower realm is limited, so let's get to work. You guys tell the villagers to stay away. Don't get in the way. When Wang Qinian and the others saw Wang Lu appear, they thought that he was really an immortal descending to the lower realm. Their hearts were indescribably excited. Unfortunately, before they could kowtow, they were dispersed by Wu Feihua and the others, making a spacious stage for the performance. He Yun and the others were looking forward to the next performance. With a low-level qi cultivating stage cultivation base, how could he establish a spiritual energy tide and then build an altar? And with Wang Lu's skill, what kind of altar was he going to build? Judging from the materials, it was likely to be above the 8th rank. The Jade Forest sect, where the dirty old man came from, only had an 8th rank fire altar, which made the surrounding immortal cultivation sects envious. Holy Maiden Fengling's heart was also filled with curiosity. Although she didn't understand the concept of an altar, she had seen it a lot in the Spirit Sword Mountain. The Lingjian school occupied the place with the richest spiritual energy in the Blue River region, so naturally, they wouldn't let it go to waste. There were many altars in the sect, most of which were made by the sixth elder Lu Li. The elder who was in charge of the sect's financial power was a genius in altar technology. When he was still in the Shudan stage, he completed his first altar, the 7th rank fire altar. And looking at Wang Lu's current appearance, his ambition seemed to be even higher than Lu Li's. As the focus of attention, Wang Lu expressionlessly paced around the array, slightly adjusted the materials of the altar around him, and then slowly closed his eyes. In an instant, the complex world around him disappeared without a trace. In Wang Lu's mind, there was only the sea of spiritual energy. If one wanted to build an altar, there were only two ways. One was to use the powerful primordial spirit of a core formation stage or a quasi-golden core formation stage to manipulate the spiritual chi of heaven and earth and release it several times, forcing it to form a tide of spiritual chi. The other was to carefully calculate the circulation of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth and make the best use of the situation, using the method of moving 1,000 kilograms with little effort to complete this miracle. In the past, Elder Lu Li relied on his keen primordial spirit to accurately find the nodes of the movement of the spiritual energy and build the altar with his low-level Shudan stage cultivation base. Elder Lu Li had the first-rank heavenly spirit root, and his aptitude was among the top 10 heavenly sword hall elders. If it were Feng He or Lu Xian, they would never be able to do it. However, Wang Lu's void spirit root was much more sensitive than the common heavenly spirit root. Even if his cultivation base was not high enough and his primordial spirit was weak, he could still see the movement of spiritual energy within a radius of several hundred meters. Of course, just being able to see was far from enough. Next, he had to use his own strength to drive the spiritual energy, gather it, and spread it. Following a specific rhythm, it would form a spiritual energy tide. This step was the real difficulty. According to Elder Lu Li's textbook, if he wanted to smoothly drive the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, he had to temper his primordial spirit to the level of 90% virtual and 1% real, which was roughly the middle level of the foundation building realm. This was only the theoretical value. In the past, Lu Li had to practice until he was half virtual and half real before he could build an altar. Wang Lu's current primordial spirit was a complete mess. Not to mention that it didn't have any substance. Even its virtual body hadn't been completely condensed. It had almost no ability to restrain the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. However, if he wanted to control the spiritual energy, he didn't necessarily need to release the power of his primordial spirit. What the 90% virtual and 1% real primordial spirit could do, Wang Lu could also use other tools to do. In the inner mansion, the Emperor Bone trembled, and the 206 jade pillars simultaneously took a deep breath. Chapter 98. The Intelligence Revenue Service's Chief Wang Lu took a deep breath. The next moment, the weather changed and the waves surged. The dirty old man He Yun and Wu Feihua's complexion changed dramatically. Although their cultivation level was not high, they didn't have high-grade spirit root, and their perception of the surrounding spiritual energy was not as good as the new disciples of Lingjian school. But how could they not feel the turbulent spiritual energy around them? Wang Lu inhaled and the surrounding spiritual energy within a radius of 300 meters roared and gathered. This was partly due to his own spirit root attribute, and partly due to the power of the array. But it was a radius of 300 meters. Even if it was an ordinary Taoist Master King pill, could he have such a vast spiritual energy field? The dirty old man tried his best to absorb the spiritual energy, but it only affected the space within a few meters around him. At the same time, Wang Lu, who was in the center of the storm, also felt a great pressure. This kind of violent absorption method was rarely used after he entered the right track in his chi cultivating stage. Now, in his inner mansion, he had formed a vortex-like spiritual energy cycle. Relying on the super permeability of the void spirit root, the spiritual energy gathering speed was enough to meet his needs. Although this kind of violent absorption was amazingly efficient, it also caused a lot of damage to the body. The huge wave of spiritual energy crashed into the wall of the void spirit root, but it only produced a platinum rain. However, the 206 soaring sword bones had to bear a huge pressure. These non-phase sword bones were the only channel to communicate with the inside and outside, but its capacity was limited. For an ordinary cultivator, it might be enough. But if Wang Lu used all his strength to absorb the spiritual energy, the 206 sword bones would immediately operate at full capacity. Now, with the assistance of the array, it was even more overloaded. Golden liquid continuously flowed out from the tip of the sword bones, but the jade pillar itself trembled incessantly, as if it was about to explode. After an unknown period of time, this round of spiritual energy gathering finally came to an end. The platinum rain evaporated and turned back into the surrounding spiritual energy. Wang Lu suddenly felt his whole body relax. Of course, in the eyes of the outside world, it looked like a huge wave of spiritual qi was rushing towards them, and the spiritual qi that had gathered just now was rushing back with an even more violent momentum. This change was very violent. The dirty old man and Wu Feihua subconsciously retreated 2 steps. At the same time, they felt the circulation of magical power within their body was faintly affected. Their complexion couldn't help but change. What an overbearing spiritual qi tide. Retracting and releasing, gathering and dispersing, it was like the ebb and flow of the sea. It operated in cycles, and that was how it got its name. And since it operated in cycles, it naturally meant that it would happen more than once. After a while, Wang Lu activated the sword bone again and took a deep breath. This time, even more spiritual energy was gathered. Affected by the previous absorption, the range of absorption this time had expanded by a full 50 meters. This was also the core of the spiritual energy tide. Every time it was released, more and more spiritual energy would be drawn into the cycle. The cycle would repeat, and the spiritual energy would roll like a snowball. Naturally, the pressure on Wang Lu himself was even greater. If the sword bone just trembled, then during the second round of absorption, he could even hear the sword bone issuing a painful buzzing sound. And the platinum rain inside his jade mansion also poured down like a waterfall. But this was not enough. During the third round of absorption, the spiritual energy within 400 meters crazily surged, and the total amount was almost doubled compared to the first round. The intensity of the impact also increased by 30 to 40%. Wang Lu clearly felt the overwhelming pain in his bones, and he knew that he had indeed been injured. Just by absorbing spiritual energy, he was able to injure the indestructible non-phase sword bone, so one could imagine the power of this spiritual energy tide. However, according to Wang Lu's expectation, this was still not enough. He needed to absorb at least 3 more rounds to accumulate enough energy to build a spiritual energy tide that could release and retract on its own. And in the last 3 rounds, each time, he feared that he would be crushed to pieces. However, who told him to cultivate the non-phase sword bone? The thing that the non-phase sword bone was least afraid of was injury. As long as it wasn't a devastating blow that was difficult to recover from, each injury would only make the non-phase sword bone tougher. Although the process was painful, why would Wang Lu care about it? Thus, the 4th round, the 5th round, the 6th round. When the spiritual energy within the radius of 500 meters was swept in by this crazy tide, Wang Lu knew that the time was almost ripe. Next, it was the real core link, which was to add his own influence at the junction of the ebb and flow of the tide, so that this artificially formed tide could operate spontaneously, thus forming a real tide. To do this, it did not require too much strength, but it required extremely accurate calculation and grasp. And this was precisely the strong point of a top student. Long before he personally put it into practice, Wang Lu had simulated and deduced it several times on the dog-ear mountain, so that he was sure that his calculation would not be wrong. When the 6th round of absorption and retraction ended, when the spiritual energy tide's influence expanded to more than 500 meters, as long as he added the spiral force just right, it could form a permanent spiritual energy tide. And this spiral, he had already prepared it in his inner mansion for a long time. Taking advantage of the fleeting moment of tranquility after the 6th round of absorption and retraction, Wang Lu endured the severe pain in his inner mansion and prepared to extract the spiral force. Next, during the 7th round of absorption, this spiral force would trigger a miraculous effect. However, at this time, buzz. In Wang Lu's field of vision, the spiritual energy, which had been restrained by the surging of the 6th round of the tide and began to move in a regular cycle, suddenly trembled irregularly. Holy *T. Suddenly, Wang Lu was restless. To build an altar with a cultivation base of low-level qi cultivating stage, this was not something that could be done just by relying on the void spirit route. Each step had been repeatedly calculated and deduced by Wang Lu. Even if there was a slight difference, the final result would be 1,000 miles off. And this irregular tremor was precisely that millimeter difference. Without thinking about the reason for the error, Wang Lu calmed his heart, put the prepared spiral force back into his inner mansion, and then quickly issued an order to the non-phase sword bone. Suck it! The best way to smooth out the error was to submerge it in the surging waves of the spiritual energy tide. Wang Lu had high hopes for the construction of this altar. How could he not consider the possibility of an accident? Therefore, when the accident really happened, although Wang Lu was surprised, he didn't panic. The seventh round of the spiritual energy tide successfully erased the trace of the trembling. When the tide receded and the next round of the tide was about to rise, Wang Lu once again took out the spiral force from his inner mansion. But at this time, buzz! Another inexplicable tremble completely disrupted Wang Lu's rhythm. And this time, Wang Lu was not only restless. One accident could be said to be an accident, but 2 times in a row, and they came so strangely. Then there must be a reason. However, no matter what the reason is, if you want to stop me from building the altar, there's no way. The 8th round of the tide. Smooth out this damn error for me. At this time, each round of the tide surged, which was a great burden on Wang Lu's body. Although the non-phase sword bone was extremely tough, under the crazy spiritual energy scouring, there were signs of complete collapse. But at this time, Wang Lu was also in a difficult situation. After the 6th round, the spiritual energy tide entered a gradually strong channel. Without the help of external force, it would automatically retract and release, and the strength would become stronger and stronger. Of course, it was still far from the perfect spiritual energy tide. If left unchecked, the spiritual energy tide would continue to become more and more intense, and when it reached the extreme point, it would suddenly disperse. But before that, Wang Lu would have long been overwhelmed by the crazy spiritual energy. According to the estimation, the strength of the non-phase sword bone could only last until the 10th round. After the 10th round, the tendons and bones would break, and the inner mansion would collapse without a doubt. And now the spiritual energy tide had reached the 9th round. Wang Lu's only hope was to find the cause of the error in the next 2 rounds, and then erase it. However, this task was really not easy. The abnormal tremor of the spiritual energy was not man-made, because each tremor was precisely produced when the spiritual energy tide surged to a certain extent. According to what Wang Lu had learned, it was very likely that he had accidentally touched some kind of feng shui node. This was really strange. These days, Wang Lu had already explored the geomancy of the Dog-Ear Mountain, and he had also roughly figured out the law of the surrounding spiritual energy. Otherwise, he would not dare to easily build this altar. If there was any hidden feng shui node in the Dog-Ear Mountain, he should have been able to find it in the past few days. Unfortunately, this was the case, and he could only blame himself for his poor eyesight. While Wang Lu was desperately thinking about the cause of the error, the 9th round of impact finally arrived. The severe pain in his body made him black out, and for a few breaths, his mind went blank. However, this severe stimulation also brought him a touch of inspiration. If the error could not be eliminated, then wouldn't it be better to incorporate it into the formula and make it a part of the entire spiritual energy system? It was almost equivalent to a super strong error correction. Then, as long as he slightly changed the original formula, he could smoothly bypass the error and establish the tide. The only problem now was, could he still adjust the formula? Because the 10th round of the tide had arrived. Wang Lu's theoretical limit was after the 10th round of the tide, but just now, the strength of the 9th round was enough to make him temporarily unconscious, and the 10th round was even more powerful. He was likely to be crushed by the 11th round of the tide while he was unconscious. However, at this time, there was no point in panicking. In the face of crisis, Wang Lu raised all his spirit. The non-phase emperor bone crazily rotated, constantly giving instructions to the other sword bones. Each sword bone moved, each adjusted its angle, and released the accumulated spiritual energy to deal with the future impact. In theory, under the strong impact of the 11th round, which was enough to shake the Taoist of King Pill, these efforts could at most increase the survival rate by 1%. However, the quality of a professional adventurer was reflected here. Even if it was only 1%, it was worth 100% effort. And just when Wang Lu was ready to face the test, another unexpected change happened. The sword bone was unsheathed. Wang Lu's non-phase sword bone was now in the 9th realm. Most of the 206 bones in his body were actually the bones of the scabbard. There were only a few real sword bones, which were distributed in both of his hands, which effectively improved the flexibility of the non-phase sword art. However, its real function was still far from being played. The next step should be to unsheathe the sword bone, changing from passive to active, and further improving the defense. That was the 10th realm. Originally, Wang Lu thought that he had to first transform all of the 206 bones into sword bones before he could unsheathe the sword, which he had confirmed with his master. However, under the crisis, the sword bones automatically reacted, and even without the command of the Emperor Bone, they unsheathed themselves, which greatly exceeded Wang Lu's expectation. But this was a good thing. Unsheathing the sword bone and hiding the blade were two completely different concepts. The moment the sword bones were unsheathed, the oncoming wave of spiritual energy seemed to be separated by an invisible sword, and the pressure was greatly reduced. The sword divided the huge wave. This was the power of the unsheathed sword bone. Although because his cultivation base was not perfect enough, the 206 sword bones were not completely cultivated. So facing the huge wave of spiritual energy that came from all directions, they couldn't completely offset its power. However, overall, Wang Lu's pressure was still offset by 30 to 40%. This meant that he could withstand at least 2 more waves. Moreover, the moment the sword bones broke through, the scabbard inside his body reacted, and the connection with the spiritual energy became more intimate. The cracks that were originally formed by the scabbard were immediately eliminated. It was probably equivalent to the full health after the upgrade. Taking advantage of this rare opportunity, Wang Lu quickly adjusted the formula and changed the structure of the spiral in his inner mansion. Before long, a brand new perfect spiral appeared in his inner mansion. Next, as long as he extracted it, a perfect spiritual energy tide would emerge. And then, the ideal altar in his mind should also take shape. As the altar for the establishment of his sect, Wang Lu carefully chose a 6th-grade altar, the solidifying jade altar. Its specialty was that it had an extremely high degree of refinement of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Even in a place like the Wang family village, where the concentration of spiritual energy was not enough to be called a true paradise, it could still be refined into high-grade spirit stones and other precious materials. Of course, the grade of spirit stones and materials was actually not important to Wang Lu. What really attracted him to the solidifying jade altar was that this was the only 6th-grade altar that he could build with his low-grade qi cultivation. The key to its construction was the extremely high spiritual pressure when establishing the tide, and this was also the only specialty that Wang Lu could bring out. It was practically a match made in heaven. Facing the last round of spiritual energy tide, Wang Lu extracted the spiral in his inner mansion. In a split second, it collided with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, triggering a mysterious reaction. The scattered materials for the altar slowly floated into the air, and were swept up by the combined force of the spiritual energy and the spiral. They automatically decomposed and assembled, forming the foundation of the altar. In a moment, the embryonic form of the altar had already appeared. However, at this moment, in Wang Lu's field of vision, a shocking wave soared into the sky. F***CK. Again? Wang Lu did not even have time to be surprised. His eyes were firmly attracted by the wave of something. The range of the last round of the tide had expanded to a radius of more than 700 meters, so he just happened to see the source of the change in the spiritual energy. The source of the change in the spiritual energy was actually his home. Of course, it was not the house in the east of the village, but under the old house where he was born. A strange stone was shallowly buried in the soil. It was no different from other rocks, but under the super strong impact of the last round of spiritual energy, it stirred up, causing the spiritual energy to surge into the sky, and its body also broke out of the soil. Like a sharp sword. Wang Lu laughed at himself in his heart. That stone was buried by himself more than 10 years ago. At that time, he felt a wave of sorrow in his heart, as if he had buried his whole life. Unfortunately, at that time his body was young, and his mind was not fully developed. His memory was vague, and later, unconsciously, he actually forgot about it. That was an incomparably precious comet fragment. It carried incredible energy. As a professional adventurer, when calculating the spiritual energy tide, he actually neglected such an important factor. It was simply a blunder. Unfortunately, it was too late to say anything at this time. That fragment, pushed by the sweeping and whistling spiritual energy, fiercely sprang out of the soil, flying rapidly towards Wang Lu. Its speed was so fast that even little Ling Er did not have time to react. In the blink of an eye, that fragment was wrapped by the spiritual energy and rushed into the center of the spiritual energy tide. The embryonic jade altar, which had originally already formed, was invaded by a foreign object, and suddenly twisted. Wang Lu tightly pursed his lips, persisted for a moment, and made a decision in his heart. He said in a fierce voice, "Fuck you, I don't care anymore." Chapter 99. The expected supernova explosion did not appear. When Wang Lu closed his eyes and raised the defense of his non-phase sword bone to the limit, all he got was a strange silence. After a while, a hesitant woman's voice sounded, "Wang, sect leader, what kind of special ceremony are you holding?" Wang Lu opened his eyes. Not far away, Holy Maiden Fengling looked at him with a teasing and puzzled face. He then turned his head. The natural scenery of the Wang family village was still beautiful. There was no big explosion, nor was there a stormy spiritual energy surge. Beside him, there was a gray sphere as tall as a person quietly lying on the ground. Wang Lu coughed and waved his hand to signal the dirty old man and the others to take action. The old man was tactful, so he nodded and then, together with Wu Feihua, set up an illusion technique, covering the scenery dozens of meters around Wang Lu. This was also a contingency plan. Once there was an accident in the process of building the altar, they would use the illusion technique to cover it, so that the villagers would not be able to see the flaw. With the illusion technique as cover, Wang Lu had nothing to worry about. He curiously reached out and touched the surface of the sphere. All of a sudden, his primordial spirit trembled. Wang Lu was surprised to find that this gray sphere actually established an inseparable connection with his primordial spirit. At the same time, he could feel a gentle suction, which rolled the surrounding spiritual energy and slowly sucked it into the sphere. A moment later, the spiritual energy dispersed. Although the scale was not large, this was indeed the characteristic of the spiritual energy tide. After gawking for a moment, Wang Lu slightly opened his mouth, showing an incredulous look. Is this a special type of altar? The solidified jade altar was supposed to be pure and flawless, but that strange comet fragment mixed in and turned it into this thing. What was this? Had there ever been a spherical altar in 9 regions? Wang Lu tried to recall. In his impression, there was no similar record in the altar encyclopedia written by Elder Lu Li. Other ancient books, such as the 9 Regions Book of Strange Objects, and so on, also didn't mention the existence of the spherical altar. Even with the erudition of Spirit Sword Sect's top student, he couldn't identify what was so wonderful about this special altar. However, if he couldn't judge it by relying on book knowledge, he would just have to investigate it on the spot. Wang Lu closed his eyes and let his primordial spirit seep into the inside of the ball. He observed its internal structure through the connection between them. With his knowledge, he should be able to determine the characteristics of the altar very quickly. However, after his primordial spirit entered, he discovered that the interior of the sphere was actually chaos. The moment the spiritual qi was sucked in, it immediately turned into a chaotic substance, completely unobservable. Tisk, as expected of a special type altar, high-end and extravagant. There was no trace of the internal structure, so there was no way to analyze the characteristics of the altar. Therefore, Wang Lu could only roughly determine that it was between the 6th and 7th level based on the intensity of the spiritual energy tide and the difference between the spiritual energy inhalation and exhalation. This was slightly inferior to the ideal jade congealing altar. Wang Lu was slightly disappointed, but he soon discovered that things were not so simple. Although the intensity of the spitting spiritual energy wasn't great, every time it did so, it seemed to be a little bit more than the last time. After waiting patiently for 10 rounds, Wang Lu confirmed his judgment with his keen perception of spiritual energy. He had seen the characteristics of this kind of altar in a book before. It could be described with 2 simple words: growth type. Interesting, there was an unwritten rule in the cultivation world that anything, whether it was a magic treasure, a flying sword, or an altar, as long as it had the words growth type in it, its value would be doubled. This was because this property was too rare. There were many growth type altars in the immortal cultivation world. According to his experience, if the newly built altars had attributes of the 6th or 7th stage, it wouldn't be strange for the altars to be upgraded by 1 or 2 stages after their growth potential was fully excavated. This was much better than the expected result. The only problem now was that although this ball-shaped altar could absorb spiritual energy, its internal structure was completely chaotic, and he couldn't control its output at all. Wang Lu tried 7 or 8 spells in a row, but there was no reaction at all. F*CK, a Pichio-shaped altar? However, since his elegant tricks were ineffective, he decided to use some of his cheap tricks. With a sigh, Wang Lu exerted all his strength and kicked the ball-shaped altar viciously. In the next moment, the ball-shaped altar shook violently and spun crazily. Soon, a mouth opened at the top, and an object fell to the ground. The object was crystal clear and radiant. Wang Lu looked down and said, F***CK. Isn't this a top-grade spirit stone? In terms of transformation ability, it means that it can transform spiritual items of 8th level and above. The transformation efficiency is not bad. With a trace of excitement, Wang Lu reached out his hand and injected some spiritual energy into the altar. Then, he kicked the ball-shaped altar again, and the ball-shaped altar began to spin again. A moment later, with a puff, another object shot out from the top of the ball-shaped altar. It was pitch-black coal. F***CK. It spits out coal? Isn't this altar too shameless? Then, Wang Lu injected more spiritual energy into the altar, but the ball-shaped altar refused to move. After thinking for a while, Wang Lu realized that the ball-shaped altar had spat twice just now was probably because it had just been formed, and there were still remnants of the spiritual energy tied inside. Now, the amount of spiritual energy he injected into the altar was not enough to complete the transformation. Although Wang Lu's cultivation strength was limited and he didn't have enough spiritual energy, he had a lot of spirit stones. He took out some spirit stones from his mustard seed bag, refined them, and injected spiritual energy into the altar. After several attempts, he roughly figured out the rules of this ball-shaped altar. The output of this altar was completely random. However, the amount of spiritual energy needed for each spit was fixed, which was about the amount of spiritual energy contained in 130 standard spirit stones. If it was less than this amount, the altar wouldn't spin no matter how hard it was kicked. If it was more than this amount, the altar would store the remaining spiritual energy. If it was more than this amount, it would simply spit it out multiple times. In Wang Lu's view, this ball-shaped altar was simply a lottery box. 130 spirit stones could be used to draw a prize, and the prize was random. The fluctuations were enormous. Wait, this setting seemed familiar? Wang Lu was stunned for a moment, then he fiercely clenched his teeth and took out the last batch of spirit stones that he had kept hidden. There were several hundred of them, and then he injected spiritual energy into the altar. The dirty old man and the others were so shocked that their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Hundreds of high-grade spirit stones? Moreover, they were used as sacrificial fuel for the altar. Director, you must be the god of wealth from the Lingjian school, right? Who didn't know that the importance of the altar lay in the fact that it could use the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to produce spirit stones and other things. But you actually went against this principle, recklessly wasting natural resources. When Wang Lu threw all the spirit stones into the altar, the gray ball suddenly swelled up, as if it was about to burst from the astonishing amount of spiritual energy. Then it began to spin crazily, no longer needing anyone to kick it. In Wang Lu's expectant eyes, the top of the ball opened up from time to time, making a powerful spray. Once, twice, thrice, 11 times in a row. Wang Lu was overjoyed. Just now, the total number of spirit stones was only 128, which was equivalent to 1,280 ordinary spirit stones, which was not even enough for 10 sprays. However, this altar actually gave him a discount. As for the result of the spray, Wang Lu helplessly looked at the 5 piles of gravel on the ground. Of course, calling them gravel was too harsh. They were essentially defective spirit stones, not even low-grade spirit stones. However, they contained a lot of spiritual energy. For the dirty old man and the others, it was a delicious meal, if they didn't take into account the raw materials of the pile of defective spirit stones, which were more than 10 high-grade spirit stones. These 5 sprays could be considered as a big loss. Of course, using spirit stones as raw materials and converting them into spirit stones by the altar itself would cause a great loss. The advantage of the altar was that it could stabilize the spiritual energy. In terms of conversion rate, unless it was a high-grade altar, it would always make people anxious. In addition to these 5 piles of gravel, there were also 2 pieces of pitch-black iron. Wang Lu's sharp eyes recognized that they were the most valuable treasure that the mortal world's martial artists yearned for, black iron. The fatty's black iron sword was made from this. However, in the immortal cultivation world, it was not a great treasure. In addition to the black iron, there was also a piece of cloud mud, a mass of solid water, and a fire flint, all of which were 8th-rank spirit objects. Their value was around dozens of spirit stones.
Seeing these things, the dirty old man and the others were very envious.
No matter what, they were still 8th-rank spirit objects. Their 7-star Sex 5-element spirit array couldn't even condense a 9th-rank spirit object. However, Wang Lu simply didn't put them in his eyes. His eyes turned and were firmly attracted by the last thing. It was a crystal clear, perfectly round, and glossy spirit pill. The spiritual energy inside the pill circulated like water ripples. Wang Lu sighed. He had already recognized it, a 5th-rank spirit pill, water cloud pill. Who knew why this inconspicuous round ball could use the surrounding spiritual energy as its raw material and directly spit out a 5th-rank spirit pill? This processing process was completely unscientific. The input and output were even more unscientific. This 5th-rank spirit pill could be sold in the mysterious Sky Mansion for at least 1,000 standard spirit stones, directly earning back the cost. Wang Lu held back his laughter and shook his head. 11 consecutive shocks? TSK, my luck is not bad. From the input and output perspective, this luck was not only not bad, but excellent, even against the heaven's will. Exchanging spirit stones for spirit stones, even a high-rank altar would lose 20 to 30% of its value. As for a 6th or 7th rank altar, the loss would be at least more than half. However, Wang Lu's 11 consecutive shocks actually made a lot of money. The so-called 11 consecutive shocks only included the last 5th-rank spirit pill.
In fact, according to the standards of the dirty old man and the others, being able to spit out an 8th-rank spirit pill was already a great shock.
Wang Lu's 11 consecutive shocks were, in fact, 6 shocks, and one of them was the best quality shock. If this was not against the heaven's will, then what was? Wang Lu's mouth said that it was not bad, but it was purely a pretentious act. Unfortunately, there was no one next to him to echo him, so his pretentious act wasn't satisfying enough. After collecting the spirit objects and elixirs on the ground, Wang Lu had no interest in continuing to test the water. First, good fortune and misfortune were closely related, and second, it was not the time to draw the lottery. As an actor, he was still standing on the stage, so he needed to continue to display the self-cultivation of an actor. There were too many accidents in this play, so it was time to end it. Therefore, Wang Lu faintly opened his mouth and his voice spread throughout the village. This altar was refined by me by collecting innate chaos tribulation thunder. It contains the origin of all things in the universe when the world was created. It can be named the Million Chaos Altar. Now that the altar has been completed, you're on your own. Then he winked at the dirty old man. The latter immediately understood and cancelled the illusion technique. Then, he used the invisibility technique to let sect leader Wang Lu ascend to immortality. The ignorant villagers who witnessed this scene from afar suddenly prostrated themselves. The invisible Wang Lu sneered. Worship the great god of 11 consecutive shocks. It's not a loss for you to worship him. Your IQ is limited, but if you're lucky, perhaps you can still be saved. Chapter 100. After Wang Lu built the primal chaos altar, the dirty old man and the others naturally settled in the Wang family village. The address chosen was Wang Lu's old house. Of course, it was also Wang Lu's intention. In fact, according to the original plan, they wanted to directly occupy Wang Dafu's house. That second local tyrant in the village had not done anything good in the past 2 years. Especially that naughty brat Wang Xiaohu who colluded with bandits and caused a lot of trouble. Expropriating their property was simply justified. However, during the spiritual energy tide, he was disturbed by a fragment of the old house and almost fell short of success. This made Wang Lu interested in the old house again. Now that he thought about it, his memory was not clear when he was young. Perhaps many important clues were missed, and if he did not carefully examine them, he would not be able to find them. The last time he returned to the village, this house was occupied by an ignorant publicity envoy. When Wang Lu visited him, he almost killed the opponent on the spot. But during the whole process, even with Wang Lu's keen heavenly spirit root, he did not notice the fragment buried in the ground. Only God knows how many secrets there were here. Unfortunately, when Wang Lu led the team to settle in this old house, he could not find any more clues. However, he did not have much expectation, so he was not disappointed. Moreover, after settling in, there was still more work to do. Opening the altar and preaching. Without preaching, how could they preach? Without preaching, how could they collect the IQ tax? However, the matter of preaching could not be proposed by Wang Lu and the others. It was best to wait for the villagers to come to their door. And the villagers, of course, had the same plan. With great difficulty, they had the opportunity to let the immortals temporarily live in the village. How could they let go of this opportunity? On the day they settled in, village head Wang Qinian, along with many villagers, hurriedly came to visit. They eagerly delivered a lot of local specialties, including wine and meat. Moreover, the old village head also fully displayed his wisdom. From beginning to end, he did not say a single superfluous word. He did not mention anything about seeking immortality. The next day, a bunch of local specialties were delivered to the door. The dirty old man did not refuse and accepted all of them, which made Wang Qinian very excited. On the third day, when Wang Qinian came to visit again, the dirty old man finally opened his mouth. "Village head, what's the matter?" Without hesitation, the village chief said, "Immortal, please bestow me with an immortal fate." The dirty old man was delighted, but he pretended to be hesitant. The old village chief immediately prostrated. "Immortal elder, please bestow." "Sigh, we've received your warm hospitality these past few days, so it's only natural for us to repay you. However, regarding the immortal fate, it's not up to me to decide." As they spoke, a young man's voice was heard. "Since you've set up an altar here, there's no harm in bestowing immortal fate." The dirty old man tactfully kowtowed. "Greetings, sect leader. There's no need to stand on ceremony. I've yet to descend to the lower realms, and I've only sent a voice transmission to you, so there's no need to stand on ceremony. In 3 days, I'll be giving a lecture on the altar. As for how much you can comprehend from it, that will depend on your own luck." Once he finished speaking, he didn't make another sound. Wang Qinian looked around in surprise. "Was that cult leader?" The dirty old man got up and nodded. "It's sect leader's voice from the immortal world. Old village head, you're really blessed that sect leader is willing to preach here. Alas, even us, the elders of the sect, can't get many opportunities in a year. This time, it's mostly because of the altar. Although sect leader is an immortal, in the mortal world, he walks the path of the mortal world, adhering to the principle of equivalent exchange. We've occupied the surrounding spiritual energy in your village, so we'll repay you with the immortal fate." Wang Qinian's whole body trembled with joy. For a time, he couldn't speak. That so-called surrounding spiritual energy was mysterious, but in his decades of living in the village, he didn't feel anything special about it. However, this immortal fate was real. Even Wang Xiaohu, that good-for-nothing thing, after cultivating for 2 years in the 7-star sect, a swindler sect, he was able to set fire and draw talismans. If such a true immortal passed down an immortal method, his future was limitless, his real future was limitless. 3 days later, the small square of the Wang family village was already crowded with people. Hundreds of people from the village had gathered, waiting for the immortal to preach. Among them, there was even the shadow of Wang Fugui's family. Wang Lu didn't tell his parents about his incarnation as the Wisdom Sect's sect leader. After all, this was an absolute secret. Although his parents were close to him, they were just ordinary people, so it was inevitable that they would leak the secret. Therefore, a few days ago, Wang Lu restored his original appearance. Taking advantage of the night, he returned home. After saying a few words to his parents, he pretended to go back to the mountain to cultivate, but he was reluctant to leave. He said that this wisdom sect was worthy of its name. Although it was not as domineering as his Lingjian school, it was rare for them to be willing to walk in the mortal world, which was a rare opportunity for mortals to touch the immortal fate. However, regarding the immortal fate, he didn't need to be too demanding. In short, Wang Lu didn't want his relatives to be too cooperative when the wisdom sect started the war, but he also didn't want them to be too maverick. Fortunately, his family's perception was not bad. Even Wang Fugui's new concubine was smarter than the ordinary villagers. Soon, she understood Wang Lu's intention, and everything that happened afterward was lukewarm. Wang Qinian came to apologize, which they accepted. Later on, he invited them to listen to the Wisdom Sect's lecture, and then Wang Fugui called his family to go out. Of course, he didn't have too much expectation for the so-called immortal fate. He just wanted to watch a play, which was in sharp contrast to the villagers who were looking forward to the immortal fate with shining eyes. When the villagers had gathered, it was not long before the appointed time. On the temporarily built high platform, He Yun, Wu Feihua, Wen Bao, and the others had already stood in their positions, ready to fight. After a moment, the holy maiden also arrived. When she also stood in her position, a figure suddenly appeared on the platform. It was the sect leader Wang Lu, who had just descended from the immortal world, lifted the invisibility technique. As the director and lead actor of the whole play, Wang Lu showed an extremely professional accomplishment. As soon as he appeared, he released a powerful aura, which made the hearts of the villagers below the stage sink and involuntarily want to bow their heads. Then, Wang Lu slowly opened his mouth. Today, I will talk about the matter in the sky. Matter in the sky. Not only the villagers below the stage, even the dirty old man He Yun and the others on the stage were curious. As for the specific content of Wang Lu's lecture, even the sect's insiders didn't know. The holy maiden Fengling wasn't interested. He Yun and Wu Feihua didn't dare to inquire about it, but when Bao boldly asked, and the answer he got was that it was a spoiler. Therefore, when they heard that Wang Lu wanted to talk about the matter in the sky, they also became interested and wanted to hear what exactly was going to happen in the sky. There are immortals in the sky. The so-called matter in the sky is the matter of the immortal world, and even more so, the matter of the immortals. Some people below the stage nodded vigorously. They gathered here to listen to the matter of the immortal world and the immortals. As for the clouds and the moon in the sky, even if there were many mysteries, what did it have to do with them? Seeing that the audience's appetite had been aroused, Wang Lu smiled and began to describe the exciting scene of the immortal world. The immortal world was vast and boundless. If the 9 regions were to enter the immortal world, it would be like a drop in the ocean. In this vast immortal world, there were naturally countless immortals. The immortals were not human. They had remarkable abilities that could move mountains and fill the seas. However, the immortals in the immortal world didn't have the everlasting disputes of interests like the mortal world. The immortals lived in harmony and helped each other in cultivation. Although the immortal world was vast and magnificent, it was calm. The reason for this was that the immortal world was a land of great abundance. No matter what kind of interest demand, it could be satisfied in the immortal world. The priceless treasures in the mortal world were as common as stones in the immortal world. In such a case, it was naturally difficult to have disputes. Moreover, the immortal state of mind was extraordinary, and their lifespan was endless, so why would they care about a temporary dispute? In just a few words, Wang Lu had outlined a magnificent and vast immortal atmosphere for the people below the stage, which fascinated the villagers. Before this, their understanding of the immortal world was limited to their own imagination and the speech of the 7-star sect's publicity envoy. It must be said that the publicity envoy of the 7-star sect was also a glib talker, but the immortal world that they described was nothing more than a mountain of gold and silver, which was completely different from what Wang Lu described. However, this grandiose imagination alone was not enough to completely captivate the villagers. Therefore, Wang Lu changed the topic and began to cater to the taste of the audience by talking about the life of the immortals. That was naturally something that would make one's heart race and blood boil. Not to mention those who have been cultivating in the immortal world for hundreds of millions of years. Any new immortal who ascended from the mortal world, when they set foot in the immortal world, would have 72 beautiful fairies serving them with the immortal world's jasper flowers and jade dew. From then on, they would become the exclusive property of that immortal. And when the immortals lived in the immortal world, they would have a magnificent palace and a vast and boundless territory. The power of any mortal world's emperor could not be compared to even the weakest immortal. As long as the immortal wanted to, they could change the lives of hundreds of millions of people in the immortal world. This description obviously greatly lowered the style, but the audience below the stage scratched their ears and cheeks, unable to contain their joy. Yes, this was the scene of the immortal world. This was the treatment of the immortal world. That mountain of gold and silver was too vulgar. How could it compare to the style of the 72 fairies? Before long, Wang Lu's immortal world came to an end. The people below the stage could not wait any longer. May I ask, Taoist immortal, how can we ascend to the immortal world? Can everyone cultivate to become an immortal? Taoist immortal, do you think I have the aptitude to become an immortal? Taoist immortal. Everyone began to talk at once, creating an uproar. On the stage, Wang Lu made a smiling face. He didn't stop them, but he also didn't answer. A moment later, the old village head, Wang Qinian, forcefully slammed his crutch on the ground. Quiet down. The village head's prestige was still effective. Soon, the noise from the villagers subsided. The village head, Wang Qinian, respectfully bowed to Wang Lu, and then asked with a sinking voice, "May I ask, Taoist immortal, us mortals, have the possibility to become immortals?" Wang Lu smiled. Yes. Wang Qinian's heart thumped wildly. Sure enough. Although the seven-star sect, that devil sect, is vicious, the theory that everyone can become an immortal is not wrong. Excited, the old village head trembled as he asked, "Then, I can also become an immortal?" Who knew that Wang Lu would shake his head? No. Wang Qinian was stunned. No, you can't. The audience also began to talk about it. Just now, didn't they say that mortals can also become immortals? Why couldn't Wang Qinian do it? Because Wang Qinian was not immortal? Wang Lu sighed. Just now we were talking about the matter in the sky. Do you know how many layers of heaven there are? The audience looked at each other in dismay. How could they answer? So far, there are a total of 9 layers of heaven in the world. These 9 layers of heaven didn't exist when the world was created, but rather, they were transformed one by one. Transformed? Yes, transformed from the mortal world. The lower 3 layers of the 9 layers of heaven, in an era ago, were like this, the mortal world. What? This time, not only the villagers were surprised. Even the wisdom sect's elders on the stage opened their mouths wide. Sect leader, you're too good at talking? Wang Lu said, after thousands of years of change in the mortal world, there is a possibility that it will ascend to the immortal world. That is the sublimation and transformation of the entire world. At that time, everyone will become an immortal, and from then on, the immortal and mortal will be transformed, enjoying eternal bliss. Therefore I said that mortals can also become immortals. Then it will take thousands of years? The specific number of years is not a fixed number. The sublimation of a world doesn't need the passage of time, but the diligent cultivation of thousands of people in this world. Diligent cultivation of thousands of people. This. What do you mean? Wang Lu sighed. Since ancient times in the immortal world, when there are millions of people who ascend to the immortal world, they will be able to sublimate as a whole and integrate into the immortal world. When the time comes, even chickens and dogs will ascend to the immortal world. Mortals can also benefit from it. But, in the end there must be millions of pioneers. Then, how many pioneers do we have in this world? So far, less than 100. Everyone was disappointed and disheartened. Wang Lu was silent for a moment. When his depressed mood gradually spread, he asked, "Do you guys give up?" Wang Qinian wryly smiled. We don't dare to deceive the Taoist immortals. Ascending to the immortal world is something that every one of us wants. But, in this case I'm afraid it will take thousands of years, when there are millions of pioneers, for the other prisoners to become immortals. By that time, we would have already turned into a pile of rotten bones. Wang Lu said with a smile. Why don't you want to be the pioneers? Among millions of pioneers, someone has to do it. Otherwise, no matter how time passes, the boundless world will not be able to sublimate. If there is a mistake, it may fall into the demonic world and sink forever. Since you guys want to become immortals, why not be the pioneers? Can we do it? If we don't work hard and cultivate, we will never be able to. The sublimation of any world is walked step by millions of mortals. The most precious thing to a person is life. To a person, life is only once. Therefore, a person's life should be spent in such a way that when a person looks back on the past, he will not feel regret for the wasted years, nor will he feel shame for mediocrity. This way, when he dies, he can say that he gave all his life and all his energy to life's most precious cause, fighting for the sublimation of the world. Chapter 101. When his voice fell, the audience was in awe, and the silence lasted for a long time. Wang Lu smiled as he turned his head and saw several hundred pairs of vacant eyes. The matter in the sky that Wang Lu said, as well as the way for mortals to become immortals, was obviously very different from their expectation. However, compared to the seven-star sect's careless promise that everyone could become immortals, the world described by Wang Lu was undoubtedly more realistic and credible. Even if deep down, the villagers were more willing to believe that as long as they ate some elixirs and were enlightened by the seven-star sect, they could become immortals, but Millions of pioneers. The immortal path was right under their feet. This kind of rhetoric could indeed make people's blood boil. However, after a moment of excitement, they had to face a real problem. Pioneers. Do they have this qualification? Even if they struggled for their whole lives, perhaps they could only become the pile of bones under the feet of the successful ones. Some people even couldn't help but feel a trace of resentment. Why did the immortal world look like what the wisdom sect said, but not what the seven-star sect described? While people were digesting the matter in the sky with complex feelings, Wang Lu opened his mouth again. You guys don't want to be pioneers? Wang Qinian froze for a moment. Yes, of course we do, but, since you want to, then why do you have resentment, doubt, and feel inferior? Do you think you can't be pioneers? Wang Qinian and several other villagers looked at each other, and then the old village head bitterly smiled and replied, Sect leader, you're from the immortal world, so perhaps you don't understand the suffering of us mortals. We don't have such good aptitude and perception. If we only rely on our own cultivation, I'm afraid we'll never reach the immortal realm. Wang Lu smiled. So you don't cultivate? Wang Qinian was immediately stunned by this question. Since there's nothing, why should I cultivate? Indeed, I was born as an immortal, so I don't understand the suffering of the mortal world. However, I know that for thousands of years in 9 regions, countless cultivators have struggled on the road of immortal cultivation. Not everyone is overflowing with talent, and not everyone has a heaven-bestowed immortal fate. Moreover, even if they are heaven-bestowed geniuses, in the end, only a few of them could reach the end. Then, what have these countless cultivators been cultivating for thousands of years? While speaking, Wang Lu pointed his finger at the dirty old man He Yun. This person was born in the mortal world. He is just a cultivator, not an immortal. But, are you willing to exchange with him? Exchange with him? That's right. In exchange for his immortal arts and cultivation base. Wang Qinian stared blankly for a moment before realization dawned on him. Of course I'm willing. Although Immortal Elder is not a true immortal, the mysteriousness of the immortal technique is not something that my old body can compare to. Wang Lu smiled. Then I'll ask you again. Are you going to fix it or not? Repair, of course repair. It's just that. At this time, the dirty old man promptly interrupted them. Yes, regarding aptitude and perception, you guys are just ordinary people. However, in immortal cultivation the most important thing is chance. And in this world, what is more worthy of being called a chance than being favored by an immortal? Hearing this, the villagers, no matter how dull they were, understood the meaning behind it, and they were immediately ecstatic. Then dare I ask, sect leader, how are we going to cultivate? Wang Lu shook his head and refused to say anything. Wang Qinian doubtfully froze on the spot, not knowing why the immortal's speech ended here. The dirty old man coughed and said, It's not that sect leader doesn't want to enlighten us, but the cultivation method is a secret of our wisdom sect that has never been divulged to outsiders. It doesn't matter that sect leader is an immortal, but other people may be implicated by the heavenly Tao. Sect leader sympathizes with his subordinates, therefore. Hearing that it had never been divulged to outsiders, Wang Qinian's mind immediately flashed, and he immediately prostrated himself. Sect leader, please accept us. All of us in the Wang family village are willing to join the wisdom sect and serve as your loyal dogs and horses. The dirty old man didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You old man are really. The wisdom sect is not a place where just anyone can join. How could you do that? At this time, Wang Lu said, These people are sincere, so it's not appropriate to just shut them out. Us building the altar here is a chance, so in addition to today's speech, we will give them another chance. These people will be regarded as active members of the wisdom sect, and we will take care of them a bit. Tomorrow, you will explain the cultivation method to them. I was born an immortal, so I'm not as familiar with the cultivation method in the mortal world as you are. He Yun bowed. Subordinate obeys. Wang Lu smiled, turned his eyes to the villagers, and then said, Perhaps you guys are doomed to not be able to see the ascension of the boundless world, but I hope you understand that every effort you make is not in vain. The road to the immortal world is filled with countless bricks, and if you personally build one of them, it will be an eternal glory. After the speech, the crowd gradually dispersed after a long time. Although there was still a lot of confusion in their hearts, most of them couldn't hide the excitement in their hearts, and their hearts almost bloomed with joy. At the same time, The leaders of the Intelligence Revenue Service also happily held a celebration feast. Just now, the speech completely achieved the desired effect. Even the most picky holy maiden couldn't help but praise it. Ha ha ha, millions of ascenders. This setting is really awesome. It's simply domineering. How did you come up with such a nonsense setting? The director modestly waved his hand. It's just a small trick, not worth mentioning. The holy maiden was still immersed in the good show just now. She was very excited. Moreover, the last part of your speech is quite wonderful. People's life should be like this. It's hard to imagine that the one who said this is actually from the non-phase peak Wang Lu, who is famous for his decadent lifestyle. *T. I'm destitute in the non-phase peak, and I even come to your place every day to ask for money. How could I have the capital to be decadent? In short, today you really open people's eyes. It's like watching you walk in the immortal gathering. Come on, let's not mention that nonsense history. After laughing, the holy maiden spoke out the problem in her heart. The beginning is good, but what should we do next? Wang Lu said. Do you still need to ask? Of course, it's to collect IQ tax. How? After the 7-star sect incident, if we want to sell spirit roots at a high price, I'm afraid that won't work. Wang Lu smiled. Therefore we have to do the opposite. Not only we don't sell 6 harmonies powder and the like at a high price, we have to sell them at a loss price. To collect tax we have to go the other way. What do you mean by the other way? For example, the 1,000 Spirit Palace, or the 100 Flower Garden. Little Ling Er suddenly realized. You want them to sell their labor? Yes, just like the rulers of the mortal world, when they exploit their subjects, they also coexist with taxes and corvée labor. In the future, when we popularize 6 harmonies powder and the like, even if these ignorant people can't cultivate to a high level, they can still be considered to have entered the door. They can build some simple buildings and lay a solid foundation for our Intelligence Revenue Service headquarters. Little Ling Er rolled her eyes and then said with a smile. Oh right, this is what you said. What luxury office building? Yes, that's what I mean. In this way, not only we directly benefit from it, but those ignorant people can also improve their cultivation through practice. Not to mention, after the building is completed, everyone will benefit from it. It's really killing many birds with one stone. As the saying goes, even if you want to kill a pig, you must fatten it before killing it. Our Intelligence Revenue Service's job is to let those ignorant people fully move. The more they move, the fatter and stronger this pig will be, and the more we can collect tax from them. Like the 7-star sect, forcing people to sell their blood and kidney in exchange for money to cultivate, it's simply like killing the goose that lays the golden eggs. These words made the dirty old man and Wu Fei Hua somewhat uncomfortable. Although they have now renounced the dark and entered the light, listening to Wang Lu's comment on the 7-star sect, their hearts were still a bit embarrassed. Then the next question is, where can we find so many 6 harmonies powder? Wang Lu said, that thing has long been rotten on the street. It's not a high-end drug, as long as you have money, you can buy it. Do you have money? So, what do you think I built those 1 million primal chaos altars for? In fact, if one really wanted to buy 6 harmonies powder, they didn't even need to use the immortal cultivation world's currency, spirit stones. This kind of drug has long been popularized in the 9 regions, and was no longer the exclusive secret medicine of the Shangjing sect. Nowadays, even a small low-rank sect could easily produce 6 harmonies spirit root. Therefore the price kept falling, and it could even be exchanged with mortal world's gold and silver. Because of this, there was room for swindlers to play their tricks. Otherwise, if they exchanged spirit stones for spirit root, and at the same time, they could only use spirit stones to exchange for gold and silver, that would be too uneconomical. However, if they wanted to purchase in bulk, it was best to use spirit stones and other things to trade. In any case, having 1 million primal chaos altars was tantamount to having an endless stream of wealth. For many low-rank sects, a qualified altar was equivalent to a spirit stone vein, which was the key to the sect's business. Speaking of which, what exactly is that strange sphere that you built today? I've never seen such an altar. As I said, it's 1 million primal chaos altars. As for the specific effect, when Wang Lu explained the effect of the altar in detail, the several people in the room couldn't help but be surprised. A growth-type altar with tide strength between 6th and 7th rank was already amazing enough. Moreover, the output height was random, and it was very likely to spit out stone slag, or even 5th rank spirit pill. This property was too against the heaven. Even a high-rank altar might not be comparable to it. At least, one couldn't expect an altar to only absorb a little spiritual energy to spit out 5th rank spirit pill. This conversion rate was completely unscientific. TSK, this is really making a lot of money every day. Wang Lu, have you ever calculated if you don't rely on spirit stones, and only rely on the tide, how long would it take to spit out? Wang Lu said, in general, I can probably play 11 times a day. The dirty old man gawked for a moment, and then suddenly got up. 11 times a day? Doesn't that mean, in a year, this altar can provide us with hundreds of thousands of spirit stones? This is equivalent to having a prefectural city. No, it's even richer than a prefectural city. In the past, when the 7-star sect occupied the prefectural city, their annual income was hundreds of thousands of spirit stones. However, this kind of windfall could not be repeated. Only when the city's accumulation was plundered for many years did they suddenly become rich. Listening to the dirty old man's sigh, Wang Lu just laughed. That's because my luck is good. 11 times in a row, I can spit out 5th rank spirit pills. Do you think this is the 11 times in a row? Okay, tomorrow before your speech, you can try it yourself. If you can't spit it out, you can use your private money to make up for the difference. The dirty old man inwardly said, if I have your luck, how could I end up like this? He hastily begged for mercy. Oh, in short, now that we have money, we also have people's hearts. The next step is... Sect leader Wang Lu's smile turned cold. Probably some people will come knocking on our doors. Chapter 102. In the eastern host prefecture of the Great Ming country in the Blue River region, on top of a barren mountain, the high-level meeting of the 7-star sect was quietly going on. For a 9th-rate sect that couldn't even reach the lowest threshold of the Wanxian League, it was destined that its development and business model couldn't follow the normal path. First of all, because their main business was to swindle and run a cult, in the Wanxian League territory, they were doomed to not be able to see the light of day. Even their headquarters had to be hidden in the middle of a barren mountain. Otherwise, among the lower-level sects, the 7-star sect could be considered as thriving, and they wouldn't be in such dire straits. Secondly, because they couldn't be shown in public, many sects didn't have the necessary equipment. For example, there was a lack of necessary communication channels between the sect leader and the other high-level elders. Generally, among the sects in the Wanxian League, there were either immortal method connection, water mirror illusion screen, communication talisman, or flying sword messenger talisman. And those first-rank sects even had heavenly talismans that could break through the restriction of countless enchantment arrays to achieve absolute communication talisman, one of which could buy the entire 7-star sect. However, when it came to the 7-star sect, they could only use the mortal world's means to hold a regular meeting to communicate with the higher-ups. Although the 7-star sect's rank wasn't high, its business network was really complicated. The several elders in the sect usually had their own territories, so they were always busy with their own business. Thus, it was rare for them to get together. Therefore, before every meeting, in order to show the unity of the sect, they would always greet each other. But today, the atmosphere in the headquarters was a little strange. A middle-aged man in a black robe hurried up the mountain. His name was Xueqi, and he was the youngest 6-stars elder in the 7-star sect. A few years ago, he was personally poached by the sect leader from a Wanxian League sect. Usually, he was highly valued by the sect leader. However, this time, he encountered some trouble and accidentally forgot the time of the regular meeting. As a result, he rushed here a bit late. When he walked into the hall with a smile on his face and was about to apologize, he suddenly felt his breathing stagnate, as if a heavy burden had been added to his body. Raising his head, the middle-aged man realized that it was the sect leader's anger. Thus, without another word, he quickly walked to his seat and quietly asked the elder beside him, "What's wrong?" That elder also used secret voice sending to say, "Didn't you notice that someone is missing?" Xueqi was stunned. "Where's Lao He?" "He, we also want to know. It's said that we've lost contact with him for a long time. He didn't come to the last regular meeting either. Missing 2 meetings without any reason, even if that sect leader is easy to talk to. You know what that means, right?" Xueqi found it hard to believe. Old he doesn't seem like such a courageous person. Betraying the sect, is he tired of living? Although his cultivation is indeed not bad, Compared to sect master, he is. Who knows what's going on? That's why the sect leader is so angry. Such a big thing happened, but everyone was kept in the dark. Xueqi. Is there no one else around old he? Apart from that Mistress Wu Feihua, the others are all disciples under 3 stars. They don't have the qualifications to contact us. Xueqi, we have the right to contact them, right? The name list of Marquis County is in the hands of Old He and Feihua. Even the sect master doesn't have a copy, so how can we contact them? Xueqi was dumbfounded. How could our 7-star sex management system be so nonsensical? Hee, it's not as formal as your myriad flower house. Humph, I'm afraid that after this, all of us will have to be more careful.
While the two of them were chatting happily in private, they suddenly heard a muffled hum above their heads.
Humph, if you've said enough, then shut up. The elders immediately quieted down. The voice in the sky was slightly angry. I've just figured out this matter. Fortunately, I know a black market merchant who happened to know that some time ago, someone bought a batch of materials and went to the Dog-Ear Mountain. To run to the Dog-Ear Mountain at this time, they really want to rebel. While speaking, the voice was like thunder, which made the elders shudder. Although the sect leader's cultivation was only at the shoot-on stage, in front of a group of foundation establishment cultivators, the gap between the 2 stages was an insurmountable gap, so they couldn't be presumptuous. Xueqi, I'll leave this matter to you. I don't need to tell you how to do it, right? Xueqi's heart turned cold.
Yes.
3 days later, Xueqi arrived at the Dog-Ear Mountain in the Marquis County of the Eastern Host Prefecture. Even after 3 days, Xueqi still couldn't forget the deep murderous intent that came from the sky before his departure. The sect leader was really angry. However, it was no wonder. Although the 7-star sect didn't have a smooth sailing these past few years, at most, they were only suppressed by other sects, and they never had any internal trouble. Old He, in addition to being lustful, really didn't have the courage to rebel. Therefore, his betrayal hurt the sect leader the most. The sect leader suddenly felt that there was no one around him that he could trust. In the end, the 7-star sect system was too weak. In order to hide their development, the sect adopted a single line of communication from top to bottom. As a result, when one point was broken, the whole line was paralyzed. Moreover, without the necessary monitoring, when Old He escaped, the 7-star sect actually didn't notice the abnormality for several days. It was also because the sect leader was quite concerned about the Wang family village's matter that when he turned around and found out that the person in charge had disappeared, he became vigilant. What the F***CK? No wonder the sect leader wanted to poach him from the 10,000 flower house. If there was no professional to rectify the situation, sooner or later, the 7-star sect would be killed by itself. However, from another point of view, this was the only way to reflect his value. From a Wanxian League sect to a small place like this, wasn't it because it had enough room for development? If there was an opportunity to integrate the resources, the 7-star sect, this lowly sect, could enter the Wanxian League. That would be like a carp leaping through the dragon's gate. His future would be limitless.
In the 10,000 flower house, he was just an ordinary cultivator, but in the future, if he could become an elder of a Wanxian League sect, his status would not be ordinary.
However, the rectification of the sect was a matter for later. Right now, the most important thing was to punish the traitor for the sect. Old He, oh Old He, why are you so obsessed that you insist on rebelling? Moreover, you even chose such a place. If it's in the wilderness, I'm afraid the sect leader would be too lazy to care about you.
However, the spiritual energy here is rich, the birds are singing, the flowers are fragrant, and the natural paradise is not something that you have the qualification to occupy.
While sneering, Xueqi took out his own unique magical tool, Thorned Flower, from the 10,000 Flower House Refinement Workshop, a 5th-rank magical tool. Combined with the 10,000 Flower Heart Law, it was close to a high-rank magical tool. The reason why he was valued by the sect leader and came alone to deal with He Yun, Wu Feihua, and other possible enemies, was because of this 5th-rank magical tool. Secondly, although he was much younger than He Yun, his strength was much stronger. Both of them were low-level foundation establishment cultivators, but the 10,000 Flower House and the Jade Forest sect were very different. The 10,000 Flower House was an 8th-rank sect, while the Jade Forest sect was only a 9th-rank sect. The two sects' heritage was very different, and in the same stage, their comprehensive strength was 10% higher. Don't look at that 10% difference in strength was insignificant. In actual combat, 10% difference meant that the outcome could be decided within 10 moves. Coupled with his thorned flower, even if he had to face both He Yun and Wu Feihua at the same time, Xueqi still had the confidence to end the fight within 5 moves.
Old He, this time I'm sorry.
As soon as his voice fell, Xueqi's expression stiffened. His half-step forward stopped in mid-air, no longer daring to move.
More than 10 meters in front of him, He Yun appeared in his line of sight with a smile on his face.
Elder Xueqi, how are you going to apologize to me? Xueqi's expression didn't change, but he was secretly shocked. This old thing, how could he appear and disappear so mysteriously? I came from afar, but it's not like I didn't prepare anything. Although I just summoned my thorned flower, I still have the tranquil heart pendant hanging on my neck. But on second thought, this old thing had been ordered by the sect leader to manage the Marquis County 2 years ago. The Dog-Ear Mountain was rich in spiritual chi of heaven and earth, so it was not strange for him to set up some strange formations here. The old thing came from the Jade Forest sect, so he was quite famous in formations. But what was the use of this?
In addition to the thorned flower, he still had the 3 cards he borrowed from the sect leader.
Any one of them could easily defeat a low-level foundation establishment cultivator. Old He, are you alone? Where's Feihua? Xueqi was confident, but when facing the enemy, he was always cautious. Seeing that the old thing appeared alone, Wu Feihua was naturally preparing to ambush him. This is really interesting, a high-level chi cultivating stage cultivator, even if she sneaks up on me, so what? I still have the 9 refined mysterious armor, which is indestructible, but really troublesome. What are you waiting for? The girl's voice behind him startled Xueqi, but the next moment, a violent impact on the back of his head made him blacked out. His last thought before he fainted, 9 refined mysterious armor, you're cheating me. When Xueqi opened his eyes again, he saw He Yun's smiling face in front of him. Seeing that Xueqi woke up, He Yun turned his head. Director, this guy woke up. Oh, pretty fast. It seems he's the best among this group of people. Ah. It's nothing. You don't understand the leader's joke. Taking advantage of the time when He Yun was talking to a stranger, Xueqi quickly looked around. The place he was at should be some long-abandoned warehouse, but it was cleaned up. He was thrown next to a pile of junk. Unsurprisingly, all of his magical power was scattered, but his foundation was still there, so it wasn't a big deal. It was just that his body was tied by invisible threads, making him unable to move. Speaking of which, he was also a foundation establishment cultivator. His magical power could connect inside and outside of his body, so his body was far more powerful than ordinary martial artists. However, under the entanglement of these threads, he didn't even have room to struggle. In the warehouse, in addition to He Yun, there was also a young man talking to him. Looking at the way the two talked, the young man's status was obviously higher. In addition, there was also a pretty girl standing next to the young man. Her face was impatient, but her status seemed to be a bit higher than the young man. At this time, Xueqi's magical power was scattered, so he couldn't see the other party's depth, but he was definitely not a simple character. Xueqi was surprised for a moment, and then he inwardly understood. Sure enough, there are people from other sects involved in this. Otherwise, He Yun would not have the courage to betray his sect. However, to care about a place like the Wang family village on the Dog-Ear Mountain, presumably, it's not a big sect. Moreover, which sect in the Blue River region would dare to ruin the 7-star sect's business? While Xueqi was racking his brain, trying to find clues, that young man's pair of clear eyes turned toward him. Hello, I am the director of the 9 Regions Intelligence Revenue Service, the Wisdom sect leader. Welcome to our newly established big family. Next, let us work hard to collect and manage the 9 Regions Intelligence Revenue Service. Chapter 103. Therefore, please give a round of applause to welcome the newcomer. This is Xueqi, who was originally an elder of the 7-star sect. He is ranked 7th among the 18 elders of the 7-star sect, which is a lot higher than old He. He is a first-class talent, and he will actively contribute his strength to the Intelligence Revenue Service. Please take care of him. In the courtyard, Wang Lu, with a smile on his face, patted Xueqi's shoulder to show how much he valued him. In front of him, little Ling Air, One Bao, He Yun, and Wu Feihua. These 4 people all had different expressions, and each had their own plans. Xueqi's face was as stiff as a walking corpse. In the warehouse, he received Wang Lu's enthusiastic solicitation, and the result was naturally to comply. First, the 3 advantages proposed by Wang Lu were indeed exciting, and second, if he didn't comply, his life was in the other party's hands. Did he really have to die for the 7-star sect? If he, Xueqi, really had that kind of unyielding and sincere loyalty, the 7-star sect leader wouldn't have succeeded in poaching him from the 10,000 flower house. Moreover, what was even worse was, in the warehouse, the young man named Wang Lu fed him a pitch-black pill, which was said to be an imported insect poison from the southern border, the 3 corpses brain pill. After eating it, if one was disobedient, it could make one's soul fly away, never to reincarnate. Of course, Xueqi didn't know that Wang Lu didn't have any imported insect poison. Not to mention, how could Wang Lu, who had always been diligent and thrifty, really be willing to feed the imported insect poison to a lowly soldier? The so-called 3 corpses brain pill was nothing more than the charcoal that spurted out from the 11 consecutive zero shocks. Therefore, Xueqi didn't hesitate. Under the eaves, he had to bow his head. In any case, as long as there's life, there's hope. Regarding Xueqi's joining, the holy maiden Fengling only lamented that the Intelligence Revenue Service's motley crew was getting stronger and stronger, and that there were more and more disgusting scums. She didn't think too much about it. Originally, she came down the mountain for fun, and these past few days, she had a lot of fun playing 11 consecutive zero shocks, 11 consecutive zero shocks, and 11 consecutive zero shocks. Despite repeated defeats, her fighting spirit was high. She didn't care whether Wang Lu lived or died in the Intelligence Revenue Service. For Wen Bao, Xueqi's arrival meant that he would have a strong man to help him with the infrastructure in the village, which greatly reduced the pressure. Thus he welcomed him. As for the rest, with his IQ, he didn't care. As for Wu Feihua, she was secretly delighted. This Xueqi came from an 8th-rank martial school. Although his cultivation was not too high, he was still 1 level higher than He Yun, the old man in dire straits. Moreover, his family was rich, and he had brought many magical tools and spirit items from his sect. His appearance was also the best of the best, a typical tall, rich and handsome man. If she could hook up with him, then she wouldn't have come to the Wang family village to do hard labor for so long in vain. Only He Yun was filled with worry. First, he was worried that this pretty boy would shake his position. Now that he was the vice-sect leader of the Wisdom sect, even if he didn't have monstrous power, he was still responsible for most of the development of the Wisdom sect, which gave him countless benefits. But to be honest, this was all thanks to the fact that Wang Lu didn't have anyone he could use. Although the Holy Maiden was strong, she simply didn't listen to his command. Although Wang Lu was obedient, he was so obtuse that it was heartbreaking. Among the high-level members of the Intelligence Revenue Service, only He Yun could make do with them. However, Xueqi's position in the 7-star sect was higher than his. Whether it was cultivation, perception, or practical ability, all of them were stronger than his, so the threat was really too big. Secondly, there was a deeper layer of worry. Wang Lu's way of doing things was so unscrupulous, it was impossible for the 7-star sect to not have any reaction. Xueqi was treated as one of the core members of the sect. The sect leader even had the intention to train him to be the vice-sect leader, or even the sect leader's successor. If he went missing, at most, it would make people lament that the 7-star sect system was not perfect enough. However, if Xueqi went missing and even defected, the sect leader would definitely fall out with him. And then what? The 7-star sect leader would lead a group of elders to kill him? If they fought, they probably wouldn't be able to win. No matter how powerful Wang Lu was, it was impossible for him to fight against a shoot-on stage cultivator. Even if the Holy Maiden factor was taken into account, against more than a dozen Foundation establishment elders, his odds of winning were very slim. Of course, Wang Lu didn't really need to fight with the 7-star sect. At the critical moment, if he showed the sign of the Lingzhen school, the 7-star sect naturally could only kneel and lick his boots. However, if he unscrupulously revealed his trump card, the next thing that awaited him would be the disciplinary elder's lightning strike. It would still be a dead end. Thinking to this, the dirty old man couldn't help but become nervous. Seeing that Wang Lu was jubilantly assigning tasks to Xueqi, he couldn't help but give the opposite party a meaningful glance. He still couldn't use the primordial spirit sound transmission technique, and his secret sound transmission technique probably wouldn't be able to hide from Xueqi. Unfortunately, Wang Lu acted as if he didn't see it. After he finished his nonsense, he clapped his hands. Okay, that's all for today. Everyone, disperse. The dirty old man still wanted to say something, but Wang Lu has already begun to close the door. This was a very clear eviction order. He could only helplessly pull Wu Feihua and prepared to leave. However, he found out that Wu Feihua's pair of charming eyes were all on Xueqi's body, which made him seethe with anger. Hey, you're not doing this right? When everyone had dispersed, a holy maiden suddenly said so. Wang Lu asked with interest, why not? Don't you think you're playing a bit unscrupulously? This is not only slapping the 7-star sect's face, but also throwing H*T on their face. There's no room for mediation. I'm not worried that you'll lose to a mere 7-star sect, but if you make this matter big, your experiential learning will end early. Wang Lu nodded. It's rare that Sister Ling is willing to seriously use your brain to think. Are you going to get another 11 consecutive 0 today? Sooner or later, I will get it. Don't look down on me. At this time, Wang Lu, who was sitting, turned around and happened to catch a glimpse of little Ling Er's chest. He couldn't help but curl his lips. Whether it's flat or not, it's not for other people to see. Oh my God, you really hit me. Crawling up from the ground, Wang Lu patted the dust and said, what you just said is right. If I don't take care of it, tomorrow, I'll probably have to prepare for a big battle with the 7-star sect, and then I won't be able to play anymore. However, if you can think of it, how could I not think of it? Rest assured, the future trouble has already been eliminated, so they simply can't come. Little Ling Er suddenly became curious. Can't come? Oh, a group of crows who can't even take care of themselves. What qualification do they have to find trouble with us? However, we have to seize the time. Taking advantage of this rare strategic opportunity, we must spread the wisdom sect as fast as possible. I also want to take this opportunity to quickly improve my cultivation. When the sect's scale and my cultivation have been raised, even if the 7-star sect wants to find trouble with us, they would have to think twice. At that time, we have the initiative in our hands, and there's nothing to worry about. Listening to Wang Lu's self-satisfied words, Feng Ling hastily interrupted him. Hey, what do you mean by can't even take care of themselves? Wang Lu smiled. Actually, it's nothing. 2 days ago, I wrote a letter, and now, it has probably been delivered to the appropriate location, so there should be a response. Letter, who is it for? The Wanxian League's Blue River Region Office, the Hall of Mortal Reason. What's that? It's a department that specializes in dealing with mortal affairs. Due to the particularity of the Blue River region, in short, it's a bunch of pain-in-the-ass cultivators. However, if you look deeper into it, their duty is to ensure that the order of the mortal world within their jurisdiction is not subject to unreasonable external interference. Unreasonable external interference refers to? For example, Jifeng's conduct in the White Moon Country is a typical example. This department is mainly in charge of cultivators' misdeeds in the mortal world. Actually, it's not unusual for the immortal cultivation world to interfere with the mortal world. As long as it's approved by the Wanxian League, it's reasonable for you to openly manipulate a country's royal family. However, if the Wanxian League doesn't allow it, even if you randomly instruct a few mortal children, they could still find trouble with you. And without a doubt, the 7-star sect couldn't get the Wanxian League's permission. Little Ling Er's mind wandered for a while before she realized what exactly Wang Lu was trying to say by beating around the bush. The young girl's eyes widened, and she incredulously asked, You, this cult sect leader, actually wrote a report letter? Wang Lu righteously and sternly said, reporting a cult is everyone's responsibility. Then why don't you report yourself first? This heroine, please respect our wisdom sect's lofty ideal. We are essentially different from a cult. Yes, how could a common cult be fooled like you? Thank you, it's rare to hear you praise me. Wrangling with Wang Lu was indeed a tiresome task. Feng Ling painfully rubbed her head. According to your words, they're just a group of idle people waiting to die. Would they go to war just because of your letter? It's not like they're a big target, they're just a small sect. Thank you for your real name report. If a report letter from one of the 5 unique successor disciples can't make them move, then don't expect this department to have a budget and staff. What the? You're using your real name? Tisk, it's an open and above-board thing. Is there a need to cover it up? Seeing injustice on the road, I'll write to help. Please call me Little Reporting Expert.
You damned informant. In a certain barren mountain in the Eastern Wei prefecture of the Great Ming country in the Blue River region, the Seven-Star sect held an emergency meeting of the elders.
Most of the participating elders have been informed of the recent jaw-dropping event. Xueqi defected.
For most of the elders, this was an inconceivable matter.
Xueqi was a high-end talent that the sect leader personally poached from the 10,000 Flower House.
Just as he entered the sect, he was already ranked in the upper middle of the elders.
However, this was because he was too young and his cultivation was too weak. His low-level foundation establishment stage cultivation was really difficult to be compared to the several high-level foundation establishment stage elders.
And his actual influence was second only to the several elders who had been with the sect leader for the longest time.
He was the 7-star sect's star of hope. The sect's future development was on him, and the resources allocated to him were also the most. How could he just defected like that? The sect leader convened an emergency meeting to deal with this matter.
However, when they entered the hall, the elders felt that the air was somewhat cold, sticky and slightly damp, which was extremely uncomfortable.
This seemed to mean that the sect leader's mood was very bad. Moreover, it was the kind of helpless and powerless bad feeling. What exactly happened?
Fortunately, the answer to the mystery was soon revealed. When almost all the elders had arrived, the sect leader's voice came from the air.
The people from the Xian League, Hall of Mortal Reason have come to our door. Chapter 104. Hall of Mortal Reason?
Unlike a certain aloof holy maiden lady boss, the people of the 7-star sect were not unfamiliar with this name. Whether they were willing or not, a sect like the 7-star sect would inevitably have to deal with the Hall of Mortal Reason.
That group of Xian League cultivators bullied the weak and feared the strong. They were greedy and insatiable. They turned a blind eye to the Thousand Spirit sect of the White Moon country, which previously had the support of the Shengjing sect.
However, for the 7-star sect from time to time, they would show their real ability to suppress this group of loose cultivators until they cried for their mom and dad.
The 7-star sect was also well aware of this truth, or perhaps it could be said that they were deeply hurt by it. A few years ago, they occupied a prefectural city in the Great Ming country. At that time, they lived a life of luxury. However, not long after, the people from the Hall of Mortal Reason came to kill them. Facing 2 shoot-on stage cultivators and more than 10 foundation establishment cultivators, the 7-star sect very unyieldingly chose to kneel down and lick their boots. They spat out 60 to 70% of the benefits, and only then did they reluctantly send them back. After that, they learned from this painful experience and actively communicated with the cultivators from the Hall of Mortal Reason, and regularly delivered benefits to them. This completely resolved the crisis and truly stabilized their foundation. However, unexpectedly, the Hall of Mortal Reason, which they thought had been pacified, actually came to stir up trouble again. Did all those spirit stones and spiritual objects from the past few years feed the dogs? Sect leader, what the hell is going on? The sect leader was also full of depression. The Hall of Mortal Reason was looking for trouble, which was reluctantly told to him by a low-level cultivator informant, but the specific reason was unclear. In the past few years, he could only bribe a few officers in the Hall of Mortal Reason, but when it came to the management level, it was beyond his reach. Now that he encountered this problem, he was completely clueless. Thus, he called for a meeting with the elders to discuss countermeasures. However, even the sect leader had no idea. What else could the others do? After discussing for the whole morning, the final result was nothing more than the sect leader personally visiting the Wang family village with a variety of treasures, hoping that they could spend money to solve this disaster. As for the Wang family village in the Dog Ear Mountain, deal with your sister. The heavenly tribulation was about to fall. Who would have the mind to care about the people in the Dog Ear Mountain? This trip lasted for a month, during which, needless to say, they spent money like flowing water. Several high-level managers of the 7-star sect often treated them to drinks, and they drank until their jade mansions were shaken. Finally, they managed to stabilize the matter. Fortunately, in the past few years, the 7-star sect had some connections in the Hall of Mortal Reason. Thus, they were able to hold this month's banquet. If it were any other sect, even if they had spirit stones and spirit wine, they still wouldn't have the means to invite people to drink. However, even so,
It still took them a whole month to invite the division leader of the Hall of Mortal Reason to come forward and send him a gift bag of tens of thousands of spirit stones. Only then did the matter settle down. In addition to this, the harvest was that they finally figured out the culprit behind the scenes. Actually, it couldn't be said to be a culprit. Who knew which brat was so bored that he wrote a report letter to the Hall of Mortal Reason, reporting the existence of an improper cult movement in the Great Ming country of the Blue River region. Every year, the Hall of Mortal Reason would receive at least 800 of this kind of report letter. Usually, they would treat it as waste paper and burn it for fun. However, they couldn't ignore this one, because the one who wrote the letter was a successor disciple of one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League. What's more, the chaos that happened in Blue River region a few months ago had greatly implicated the Hall of Mortal Reason of the Union of 10,000 Immortals. Both the hall leader and the deputy hall leader were punished, and since then, their nerves have become particularly sensitive. At that time, the Thousand Spirit sect was single-handedly destroyed by a spirit sword sect elder in the White Moon country, and the culprit behind the scenes, Taoist Master Ji Feng, came to the White Moon country to investigate the matter. After his defeat, he was punished by being deprived of his body and tortured in animal form for 10 years. These inside stories were not publicized by the Wanxian League. However, the Shengjing sect's attitude toward the Lingjian school had a tremendous change. Especially in the Blue River region, the Wanxian League could ignore the other sects, but they could not ignore the voice from the Lingjian school. Thus there were such twists and turns. Fortunately, it was just a report letter from a disciple, and there was no follow-up, so they could barely digest it. However, when they came back from the Hall of Mortal Reason, whether it was the sect leader or the several elders, all of them felt as if they had shed a layer of skin. While they were exhausted, naturally, they vented their anger on the Seven Stars sect. Although the Seven Stars sect had no way to deal with the Hall of Mortal Reason, it was time to clean up a certain group of people who had been holed up in the Dog-Ear Mountain for a month. However, just as the sect leader was about to take a short break and prepare to leave the mountain, a new trouble came. What mysterious sky mansion? Are you kidding me? What do we have to do with them? Usually, we can't even enter their door? What? They say we are involved in illegal trade, including mass destruction poison. Is there any justice in this? How could a poor sect like us have mass destruction poison? But isn't their mysterious sky mansion often auctioning top-rank poisonous insect poison? They claim that one of them can destroy a small country, so why are they investigating us? Although they roared, the mysterious sky mansion's background was countless times more powerful than the Hall of Mortal Reason. Although it was just a small branch of the mysterious sky mansion, its strength was enough to crush the Seven Stars sect 100 times over. For this kind of unexpected disaster, the sect leader was helpless. He had to summon the elders' assembly again, and then, after some discussion, he brought several elders with spirit wine and spirit stones to the Seven Stars sect for public relations. This trip lasted for half a month. When they came back, they felt like they had shed a layer of skin. Among them, the most unlucky elder, because of excessive drinking, suffered a demotion in cultivation level, which was too horrible to look at. At this time, the Seven Stars sect didn't even have the strength to be angry. They just subconsciously remembered that there was still a disaster in the Dog-Ear Mountain. When he was about to open his mouth to discuss this issue, the sect leader's heart trembled, and an ominous premonition welled up in his heart. Damn, it can't be. Shaking his head, the sect leader decided not to believe it, so he said, "The problem in the Dog-Ear Mountain." Before his voice fell, an elder breathlessly ran in. Reporting to the sect leader, "The people from the Wanxian League are here again." F***CK, what happened this time? They said that our Seven Stars sect is involved in the rough development, which seriously damaged the natural environment of the Blue River region. What the F***CK? What kind of bullsh**T reason is that? And they still have the nerve to say it. The Wanxian League occupied the spirit vein and violently developed it, causing the mountain to collapse and the ground to sink, but they didn't even care about it, and now they came to find trouble with us? The sect leader was so angry that he wished he could pull out his beard and hair to show his indignation. Unfortunately, for a low-class sect like the Seven Stars sect, indignation was not worth much. After venting his anger in the hall for a while, the sect leader could only sigh, got up and went out to deal with it. In this way, time once again slipped away. When the Seven Stars sect finally solved all the problems, the entire upper echelon had been tossed and out of breath. After a few days,
they finally remembered that there was still a big problem in the Dog-Ear Mountain that needed to be solved. Damn, I wonder how those two dog thieves He-Yun and Xueqi are doing now. What exactly happened in the Dog-Ear Mountain? In fact, in the past 3 months, the Dog-Ear Mountain could be said to have been turned upside down. Wang Lu did not hesitate to turn himself into a whistleblower in order to gain 3 months of development time for the Wisdom Sect. In the Dog-Ear Mountain, and even in the surrounding areas of the Great Ming country, the biggest obstacle was the 7-Star Sect. As long as the 7-Star Sect didn't make a move, the Wisdom Sect's development would be smooth. And in these 3 months without other people's harassment, the Wisdom Sect's development was indeed unusually rapid, like a wildfire that could not be stopped. The first was the crazy expansion of the sect. With Wang Lu's successful performance in the Wang family village, Xueqi, the dirty old man, and Wu Feihua, these 3 people were not fools. They imitated him and held a sermon in several villages around the Dog-Ear Mountain, rapidly accumulating a large number of believers. With the spreading effect of the believers, the influence of the sect snowballed, and it had already begun to radiate its influence to the surrounding counties. In the 7-Star Sect's era, the remote villages and counties didn't have much development value. However, for the Wisdom Sect, who had diversified their tax collection, no one had no development value. Even if they didn't have money, at least they had the body, the labor force, and the kidney. However, only the Wisdom Sect could dig out this part of value. In these 3 months, the Wisdom Sect had absorbed more than 10,000 believers, but their biggest reliance was not Wang Lu's advanced theory of millions of forerunners, nor was it the primal chaos altar that often sprayed out expensive spiritual objects. The Wisdom Sect's real advantage lay in its ability to dig out the potential of the vast common people. In these 3 months of development, among the tens of thousands of believers, there were already more than 500 people who succeeded. The proportion seemed small, but they were scattered among dozens of villages, and each village had at least a few successful examples. This was more convincing than any slogan or theory, making the believers dead set. In the past, the 7-Star Sect played all kinds of tricks among the common people, but the effect was nothing more than this. However, it was impossible for them to have this kind of rapid development momentum. Moreover, once the scam was exposed, the believers would naturally be lost. As for how the Wisdom Sect achieved such a miraculous development, there were only 2 reasons. First, by importing a large number of 6 Harmonies powder and spirit root development pills, and then widely spreading them so that everyone would have the opportunity to cultivate. This step could be said to be difficult, but with the primal chaos altar, its stable income was enough to pay for this cost. After all, 6 Harmonies powder was not an expensive medicine. As long as they could get through the supply chain, the rest was just a matter of negotiating the price. And it just so happened that Xueqi had several resources that he could use. The second was to turn the opportunity to cultivate into tangible results, which was also the most difficult step. For ordinary people, 6 Harmonies powder could only be said to open a crack in the immortal cultivation door. In fact, even if they cultivated for more than 10 years, they still might not be able to draw the spiritual energy into their body. The effect was close to nothing. The 7-Star Sect had been deceiving people for many years, but they never had a breakthrough in this aspect. Even when they occasionally met a distinguished guest, they would spend a lot of money to use a higher-grade artificial spirit root, but often, they still couldn't cultivate. However, in the hands of Wang Lu, even the 6 Harmonies spirit root shone with unparalleled vitality, which made a group of mountain village barbarians who wanted perception but didn't have it, who wanted opportunity but didn't have it. The trick was actually very simple. Heaven-burning blood technique. Chapter 105. Many people in the immortal cultivation world of the Blue River region were not unfamiliar with the heaven-burning blood technique. It could even be said to be famous. However, a few months ago, Taoist Master Jifeng suffered a crushing defeat at the Spirit Sword Mountain. Although, in order to look good, the 2 sects concealed the details, but the negative evaluation of the heaven-burning blood technique still came out. The first to denounce this evil method was the Spirit Sword sect elders. However, it was an indisputable fact that Jifeng had developed a large number of low-level cultivators in the White Moon country through the heaven-burning blood technique. Afterward, the Union of 10,000 Immortals sent a large number of cultivators to form a research team. Through Jifeng's confession and the remaining materials and information of the Thousand Spirit sect, they conducted a comprehensive study of the improved method. The result was a sigh. The comprehensive analysis of the heaven-burning blood technique just happened to support the inference of the Spirit Sword Elder. This was a crooked method with too many flaws. The explanation put forward by the spirit sword elder was that his heart's Tao was shaken and he was just a bystander. For many people, it was difficult to understand the true meaning of this method. In simple words, the heaven-burning blood technique could not really help people in immortal cultivation. It was like a sentimental spring dream. In the dream, it was extremely comfortable, but it couldn't change anything. The basic principle of the heaven-burning blood technique was to burn people's most precious asset, lifespan, in exchange for a large amount of magical power and spiritual energy, which could then promote the advancement of cultivation. However, not to mention that magical power was not the whole of the immortal cultivation, this kind of exchange was not equivalent. For example, a cultivator with 6 harmonies spirit root could reach the high-level Qi cultivating stage after 30 years of hard work. If he used the heaven-burning blood technique, he might be able to reach the same level in just a few years. However, the consumption of lifespan was more than 60 years. If he was a little bit careless, he might even die because of the intense burning of his lifespan. Jifeng tried his best to improve the method, but he only managed to avoid sudden death and slightly increase the conversion rate, from 60 years to 59 years. Essentially, there was no change. This seemed very ridiculous. The heaven-burning blood technique was regarded by Jifeng as a great opportunity for everyone to become an immortal, but in essence, it basically blocked the possibility of people going further. If a cultivator with a lifespan of 100 years could eventually reach the foundation establishment realm through painstaking cultivation, then thanks to the blessing of the heaven-burning blood technique, he could at most reach the Qi cultivating realm before burning his lifespan. Moreover, because his cultivation progress was too fast, this kind of cultivation was like a castle on the floating soil. It couldn't withstand a single blow. The heaven-burning blood art's only use should be to make a breakthrough in a battle. For example, if one's aptitude was insufficient, and his cultivation was stuck in a bottleneck, unable to make a breakthrough, and his lifespan was about to come to an end, he could use the heaven-burning blood art as a gamble. He might be able to achieve a breakthrough and extend his lifespan, but it was a last resort. However, if this art was popularized in the world, and used as a magical weapon to speed up his cultivation, it would be too ridiculous. If it was in the chaotic era thousands of years ago, it would not be anyone's business how this stupid method was spread. But now that the Wanxian League had been established, the world of cultivation would not tolerate this kind of opportunistic method to be widely used. If everyone burned a few years of their lifespan when they encountered difficulties and hoped to break through, there would be no future for the world of cultivation. Therefore, when Wang Lu proposed this plan, it was immediately met with strong doubts. Are you out of your mind? How can you come up with this kind of idea? Aren't you afraid of being caught by your master and beaten up? Ridiculous. What reason does she have to find trouble with me? It's not like I won't give her a share of the IQ tax. You clearly know that she hates the heaven-burning blood art the most. Really? I don't think so. Speaking up to here, Wang Lu found it funny and asked, Sister Ling, have you ever thought about where I learned the heaven-burning blood art? Little Ling was surprised. Where? Even if you are a top student, you are not born with knowledge. Any knowledge must have a source. This improved heaven-burning blood art. Even our sect's most knowledgeable martial uncle Lucien doesn't know it. Can you guess where I learned it from? It can't be. It can't be. Speaking to this, even if little Ling was slow, she still realized that the person who taught him the method was actually Wang Wu herself. Rather than saying that my master hates the heaven-burning blood art, it's better to say that she hates fools who take the heaven-burning blood art as a shortcut to immortal cultivation. My point of view and her point of view are very consistent. Fools must die. There is no shortcut to immortal cultivation. However, the heaven-burning blood art itself is innocent. Not to mention, even if it's a pile of shit, as long as it's used, it will have its effect. I didn't use the heaven-burning blood art to take a shortcut. Then you did it for fun? It has nothing to do with fun or not. This is the only way to develop the wisdom sect. Think about it carefully. What kind of people are we developing? They don't have money, they don't have aptitude, and they don't have perception. Such people, in my master's words, if they don't honestly stay at home and eat shit, why would they want to cultivate? The only redeeming quality about them is their natural lifespan. So, if they want to cultivate if they don't risk their lives, what else could they do? The holy maiden was puzzled. Even if they risk their lives, so what? Using the heaven-burning blood art to exchange for cultivation is not worth it. How is it not worth it? It's true that a 6 Harmonies spirit root cultivator has a chance to reach the foundation establishment stage after 100 years of hard work, but how could these ordinary people have 100 years of time to squander? In the Wanxian League, the disciples don't have to worry about food and clothing. They only need to concentrate on immortal cultivation. However, mortals can't do that. If they don't farm, they will starve to death. If they don't weave, they won't have clothes to wear. There are too many trivial things to distract them. Moreover, I don't have time to wait for them to finish their immortal cultivation. The sect only gave them 1 year of experiential learning. If we want to fully squeeze the labor force, of course, we have to use the heaven-burning blood art to overdraft their cultivation. The earlier they have the cultivation, the earlier they can contribute to the development of the wisdom sect. The wisdom sect is currently in the development stage, so if we can be a step faster, we must be a step faster. But, wouldn't those who burn their lifespans suffer too much? Wang Lu sneered. Sister Ling, when did you become so sweet? Without the predecessors to suffer losses and plant trees, how could the future generations enjoy the shade? Now that the wisdom sect is developing rapidly, it's all thanks to this group of new disciples who can draw spiritual energy into their bodies. On one hand, they can display the advertising effect, but on the other hand, they can do the hard work to build the infrastructure. Those auxiliary altar in the Wang family village, the spirit grass garden, the Earth Spirit Hall. Do we have to personally build them? Without these complete facilities, how could the wisdom sect attract high-end talents to join us? Last week, there were 3 high-level Qi cultivating stage loose cultivators who intended to join the wisdom sect. If we slowly wait for those wastes to succeed in their immortal cultivation, then don't expect the wisdom sect to develop in this lifetime. Speaking to this, Wang Lu sighed with emotion. The development of a sect, the accumulation of its original capital is bloody and inhumane. Sister Ling, you have to learn to adapt to this. In the end, you're just using righteous words to collect money, right? Little Ling, Air was obviously somewhat indignant. TSK, you underestimate me. So far, the intelligence tax collected by the Intelligence Revenue Service has been fully invested into the sect's construction. Not a single cent has fallen into my own pocket. Little Ling Air felt that Wang Lu's statement was quite novel. The wisdom sect's development has been rapid, but after so long, only Wang Lu himself knew the exact amount of profit and investment. He had an account book in his heart, but he had never made it public for others to see. Are you that selfless? Little Ling Air was extremely skeptical. Wang Lu shrugged. It has nothing to do with selflessness. The basic quality of a professional adventurer is to recognize the goal and concentrate. The reason I went down the mountain to gain experiential learning is not to make a fortune. The establishment of this sect is also to manage and use the intelligence tax well, not to fill my own pocket. My goal has always been clear, that's all. TSK, your righteous face really makes people uncomfortable. However, regardless of whether Little Ling Air found it pleasing to the eye or not, under the leadership of Wang Lu, the rapid development of this dog-ear mountain sect had already exceeded many people's imagination. 3 months later, when the 7-star sect finally had time to prepare to enter the dog-ear mountain, they no longer had to face a sect that had just started, which could only rely on 2 rebellious little foundation establishment cultivators to support the sect, but a behemoth with more than 10,000 believers and a sphere of influence that spanned across many prefectures and counties. In terms of grassroots influence, in just 3 months, the Wisdom sect has reached 60% of the 7-star sect's level. Moreover, because of its novel theory and rapid development, it really attracted some loose cultivators to join. None of them had a high cultivation level, but there were more than 10 people from the high-level Qi cultivating stage to the low-level foundation establishment stage. Among the unrated sects, this lineup was already considered good. Therefore, when the 7-star sect's vanguard entered the dog-ear mountain for less than half a day, they were immediately beaten by a fierce sword light and fled to the top of the barren hill, where they sullenly reported the result. The 7-star sect's sect leader was also taken aback. Although he had expected that things might be bad, he didn't expect it to be this bad. The 7-star sect had been developing in the Great Ming country for many years, so they were familiar with several of the nearby large sections. Before they set off, they deliberately notified them to confirm that this was not the work of those sections. However, they didn't expect that when the real culprits surfaced, they were not as easy to deal with as those sects. There were more than 10 high-level Qi cultivating stage cultivators and 4 or 5 foundation establishment stage cultivators. In the Great Ming country, This was already a force that could not be underestimated. Although there was still a big gap between them and the Seven-Star Sect, the other party didn't reveal all of their cards. At the same time, the Seven-Star Sect couldn't easily come out with all of their strength to fight them to the death. Once they started a war, even if they won, it would be a Pyrrhic victory. Therefore, in desperation, the Seven-Star Sect's sect leader could only suppress the anger in his heart. Let's talk. Indeed, they should talk first. It was at this time that the Seven-Star Sect realized that they actually didn't understand their opponent at all. They didn't know who the other party was, where they came from, and what their intention was. So, who should they talk to? Of course, it was Xueqi and Hiyun. These two people defected without saying a word. Even if the Seven-Star Sect didn't pursue this matter, they should still feel a bit ashamed. Moreover, among the other sects, the Seven-Star Sect could easily contact these two people. 2 days later, the Seven-Star Sect's sect leader met with Xueqi. Of course, it was a private meeting. Regarding the elder that he personally poached a few years ago, he still had some hope in his heart. However, after the meeting, Xueqi just wryly smiled. Sect leader, I sincerely advise you to go back. This is not an opponent that you can deal with. Chapter 106. Sect leader, this is not an opponent that you can deal with. After the meeting, Xueqi spoke frankly. If it was 3 months ago, perhaps he wouldn't be so resolute. Although at that time, he already knew that the sect leader Wang Lu probably came from one of the top-ranked sects in the Wanxian League, with a deep background. However, in the immortal cultivation world, background didn't mean everything. In the face of a powerful opponent, the Seven-Star Sect also has its own way of survival. This was the so-called snake has its own way of survival. Especially for a young cultivator like Wang Lu, whose cultivation was still shallow, it was clear that he wanted to go down the mountain for experiential learning. Thus, there were too many ways for him to return to the mountain. However, 3 months later, after witnessing the crazy development of the Wisdom Sect, Xueqi no longer dared to have any contempt. This young disciple from a famous sect didn't come down the mountain to play, but rather, he really wanted to do it, and he really had the ability to do it. Today's Wisdom Sect, even if they didn't use Wang Lu's background, it was not a weak sect that could be easily needed. Under Wang Lu's guidance, each of the loose cultivators who joined the Wisdom Sect had made great progress. Especially those who had been trapped in a bottleneck for a long time, Wang Lu's words often pointed out the key point, and their cultivation base soared. As the first batch of Wisdom Sect's backbone, Xueqi naturally received a lot of benefits from Wang Lu. After he used his resources to import a large number of 6 harmonies powder for the sect, he obtained a cultivation method called Dazzling 100 Flowers, which just so happened to make up for his lack of cultivation. His cultivation level didn't advance, but his strength actually rose by a notch. This was the F*King feeling of hugging someone's thigh, comfortable and free. Now, Xueqi was completely loyal. Even without the 3 corpses divine brain pill, he would not betray that young Qi cultivating stage cultivator. If the Seven-Star sect leader didn't personally come, he would have even forgotten that he was once a member of the Seven-Star Sect. However, since he had met him, and because of their past friendship, Xueqi didn't intend to fall out with him, so he gave a heartfelt advice. The sect leader earnestly stared at Xueqi's eyes, trying to find a trace of hypocrisy and deception. However, he was still disappointed. Xueqi was serious. This guy indeed remembered their old friendship and respected him very much. Moreover, he deeply understood his power and majesty as a shoot-on stage cultivator. However, he still gave such a warning. Why? Xueqi shook his head helplessly. Unfortunately, I can't say. Taking the risk to meet the sect leader today is already the limit of what I can do. The sect leader paused for a moment and nodded his head to express his understanding. But then he sighed and said, if this goes on, I won't be able to answer to everyone. Xueqi smiled bitterly. You are the sect leader, why do you need to explain to everyone? And what was there to explain? Since the establishment of the Seven-Star Sect, could it be that everything went as they wished? If there was even a slight setback, they would have to explain themselves to this and that? Have they never had to compromise? The sect leader was still unsatisfied. I don't even know who my opponent is. So what if I know? There were some things that were better left unknown. Sect leader, in recent years, the Seven-Star Sect's development has been relatively smooth. However, in the immortal cultivation world, the seven-star sect is still far from being on the stage. If those big sects casually make a move, the seven-star sect might be annihilated. We must find the right way to survive. At this point, the sect leader keenly captured a few key points. The big sect's handwriting? No wonder, including the people from the Wanxian League who like to find fault with them. However, if they were from the Wanxian League, why would they come to this kind of wilderness? The spiritual energy in the Wang family village was rich, but it still couldn't enter the eyes of the Wanxian League, right? Unfortunately, no matter how much he asked, Xueqi couldn't say more. The sect leader knew that it was useless to press him. If he pressed him too hard, even their personal friendship would no longer exist. Before leaving, the sect leader wanted to say something, but when he opened his mouth, he didn't know what to say. He remembered a few years ago in the 10,000 Flower House. The two of them drank and chatted, thinking about the future. At that time, the seven-star sect had just been tossed around by the Hall of Mortal Reason, and its foundation was far from today's solid. Xueqi was just a low-level disciple, waiting to die in the sect. When the two of them were drunk, they agreed to join hands to officially send the seven-star sect to the Wanxian League. In the future, their cultivation path would be wider, and they would be able to appreciate the infinite charm of the immortal cultivation path. It was a pity that the companions of the past were now enemies. And in the future, where would the road ahead of them be? He had cultivated for 100 years to reach the Shudan stage. If he didn't have a big opportunity in this life, perhaps his immortal cultivation path would end here. He was really unwilling. Thinking of this, the sect leader's mood became even more irritable. He turned around and was about to leave. At this time, his jade mansion slightly trembled, which awakened his primordial spirit. "Who is it?"
"Oh, it's me."
The sect leader only heard the voice, but couldn't see the figure. He inwardly cursed, "Who am I?" However, on the other hand, he used his Shudan stage primordial spirit to scan the surroundings, but he couldn't find the direction of the speaker. If it wasn't because this dog-ear mountain had been arranged like an iron bucket, and the array was enough to suppress his primordial spirit's perception, then the other party's cultivation was higher than his. But no matter which one it was not good news. The sect leader's heart was moved, but on the surface, he didn't show it. Instead, he secretly cast out his protective magical tool. His usual weapon, the Seven Stars Atlas, was also held in his hand, ready to be activated at any time. Well, actually, I don't think you need to be nervous at all, because this is just my sound transmission technique. I'm still far away from you, so it's normal that you can't find it. If you do, then you're crazy. The sect leader suddenly felt like he was eating an apple but ended up eating a bug. Damn, no matter how much he thought about it, he ignored this most basic possibility, which was really shameful. What do you want? To get straight to the point, I want to invite you to join the Wisdom sect.
The sect leader froze for a moment, and then burst into laughter.
Invite me to join the Wisdom sect? That's a funny joke.
Sincere as the sun and the moon.
Then I'll say it clearly, you're just daydreaming.
Hey, you refuse so quickly?
Even if it's according to the 10 moves routine, you should at least hesitate, right? My Wisdom sect is developing rapidly and has a promising future. If you join now, you can still get some of the original shares, but in the future, there won't be such a cheap thing. The sect leader's expression became serious. If I'm willing to be used by others, with my cultivation, in the Wanxian League, besides the high-rank sects, which one can't I join?
Like the 10,000 Flower House and the other sects, it's not impossible for me to become an elder.
As for recruiting, I've already reached the Shudan stage, and I've seen many of them in the past few decades. Your little Wisdom sect can't even be ranked. Wang Lu was about to elaborate on the difference between his Wisdom sect and the traditional sects, but the sect leader interrupted him. I know you have an extraordinary background, and before coming here, I've already investigated your Wisdom sect. In just a few months, you've already developed to such a scale in the Great Ming country. If you say you're a loose cultivator without any foundation, I really don't dare to believe it. But if you think you can rely on your sect's background to do whatever you want, that's a big mistake. In fact, I really want to know, if the sect behind you knew that you've developed this sect in the Great Ming country, would they really support you? Dozens of miles away, upon hearing this, Wang Lu was very surprised. He sighed with emotion. Old man, your IQ is 10% higher than I expected. 3 months ago, when he established the wisdom sect in the Wang family village, he had been in contact with a lot of loose cultivators and sections. Although Wang Lu's identity had always been strictly confidential, most people could see that he had a deep background. Realizing this, people only thought that this was an unparalleled advantage. However, few people could think that if Wang Lu really came from one of the high-ranked sects in the Wanxian League, would his sect really be happy to see him run this kind of cult organization in the mortal world? This was not surprising, because the vision of the current loose cultivators was far from enough to understand the thinking mode of the high-ranked sects in the Wanxian League. For those big sects, the value of the mortal world was close to nothing. The Seven Stars sect occupied the mortal world's prefectural city and amassed hundreds of thousands of spirit stones, which was enough to drive these low-rank loose cultivators crazy. However, for a high-rank sect, just the sect's public expenditure alone would cost at least tens of millions of spirit stones every year. For Shengjing's sect, it was an astronomical figure. Hundreds of thousands of spirit stones were not even enough to fill the gap between their teeth. Therefore, it was very difficult for them to understand why those high-rank sects simply didn't care about the mortal world's wealth. Tens of millions of spirit stones were far less important than the sect's face. Our Seven-Star sect has no intention to interfere with your wisdom sect's development. If some people in our sect can't resist the temptation to join your sect, I can also let bygones be bygones. In the future, the well water will not interfere with the river water. No one will provoke the other. The sect leader said with a sinking voice and was about to leave. However, how could Wang Lu let him go so easily? What a joke. Now you say it nicely, but when you go back, I'm afraid you'll summon your troops to find trouble with me. Perhaps, you'll even send a report everywhere, reporting that some famous sect's disciple has gone down the mountain to develop a cult, requesting the relevant department of the Wanxian League to investigate. In my opinion, you'd better stay here. The sect leader chuckled. In the end, you still want to make your move? With that, he turned his gaze to Xueqi. The latter showed a helpless look and took a few steps back, indicating that he was helpless in this matter and could only help neither side. The sect leader was slightly gratified and nodded. Very well, let me see the means of a famous sect's disciple. His voice has just fallen when a 7-colored ray of light flashed in his palm, and a 7-stars atlas enveloped the area of several hundred meters in radius. More than 10 hidden figures were forced to reveal themselves, and a burst of exclamation came from them. Sure enough, it's an ambush. The sect leader wasn't surprised at all. Today, he and Xueqi agreed to meet near the Dog-Ear Mountain, but he didn't really think that the other party would come alone. Even if Xueqi was magnanimous, could the Wisdom sect leader also be open and aboveboard? If there really wasn't an ambush, it would be strange. However, even so, he still came. Because today's battle was not the first time the Seven-Star sect experienced this kind of situation since its establishment. In the past, when the Seven-Star sect took root in the Eastern Host Prefecture, it was by stepping on the bones of the White Horse village that was originally stationed there. Later on, when the Seven-Star sect had a conflict with the Yushi sect over the territory, he went alone to pay a visit and was surrounded by dozens of cultivators from the other side. After that bloody 3-day battle, the Yushi sect's name was removed from the immortal cultivation world, although it was originally not a registered sect. Although the sect leader was seriously injured, because of this battle, he refined his 7 stars atlas into a magical treasure, which doubled his power. This point, in addition to the 2 most trusted elders of the 7 stars sect, he hadn't told anyone else. Including Xueqi. He only thought that the 7 stars atlas was a high-rank magical tool, but he didn't know that it had been sublimated 10 years ago. Today, it suddenly unfolded, which really caught the other side off guard. Then, the sect leader's mouth slightly hooked up. However, before he could activate the 7 stars atlas, a voice came from behind his head, which caused his primordial spirit to tremble and his jade mansion to shake. Tisk, so troublesome. You guys are really slow. Chapter 107. You guys are really slow. Bas. Along with the sound behind his head, the 7 stars sect leader felt his whole body tremble. A huge force drove his body to issue a humming sound, and then his vision blurred. His whole body appeared hundreds of meters away. The sect leader froze for a moment, and then let out a long sigh, stabilizing his primordial spirit inside his jade mansion. At this time, the cold sweat on his back had soaked his Taoist robe. Just now, when he was suddenly attacked from behind, even though he was extremely vigilant and used his 7 stars atlas to suppress the surrounding space, he didn't even have the slightest awareness. If not for his 7 stars atlas infusing his true spirit chi and condensing 7 stellar accumulations, which could block the disaster in a critical moment, he would have been defeated.
What the hell? Who exactly is that guy? Oh, he's quite fierce. Sure enough, a Xuedan is indeed a Xuedan. You can't be taken lightly. The mid-air sound transmission technique brought Wang Lu's appreciation. He carefully laid out the plan, using Xueqi as bait and more than 10 loose cultivators as camouflage. The real killer move was naturally little Ling Air, who was known as the nemesis of cultivators. With her vacuum physique, no method could invade her. As long as she wanted to hide, no matter how brilliant the spell was, it would be impossible to detect her. Moreover, she also had the attack power to break 10,000 methods, making her the best assassin. In the 3 months of rapid development of the Wisdom Sect, the number of enemies who were successfully tricked by little Ling Air were not few. Among them, there was no lack of high-level foundation establishment cultivators. Unfortunately, such a trick was not enough to deal with a Xuedan stage cultivator. TSK, it actually failed. Hundreds of meters away, little Ling Air, who had failed in her sneak attack, put her hands on her waist and said with a dull face, "What should I do next?" Wang Lu said, "According to the bet, you should owe me 500 spirit stones." "I didn't ask you about the bet. I won't renege on it." The private operator with an average daily turnover of more than 10,000 spirit stones was very magnanimous. "Oh, it doesn't matter. In any case, I've taken your clothes as collateral. If the money is not enough, I can just auction them." "Damn, you're courting death." "Rest assured, you and I have known each other for many years, so I won't use your clothes." "Well, in any case, you're useless here. Go to the eastern mountain to help the dirty old man clean up the small fries." Tisk, it's just a battle of small fries. Although she was unhappy, she didn't wait for Wang Lu to say anything. Little Ling Air had already used her Qing Gong. She dashed through the forest like the wind and disappeared like a ghost. "Then, fellow sect leader, it's time for us to have a match. You and I are both sect leaders, king against king." The sect leader sneered. The light from the 7 stars atlas became even brighter. Under the dim light of the night, it seemed as if it could pierce through the heavens. "I couldn't ask for more." The next moment, from the shadows of the bushes, more than 10 sword lights came from all directions. The sect leader was shocked. He hurriedly pinched his fingers together and used his body and sword to repeatedly point at the air, scattering the sword lights one by one. Although there was no actual threat, he was so shocked that he broke out in a cold sweat. Then he flew into a rage out of humiliation. "Is this the king versus king you were talking about?" Just now, it was clearly more than 10 cultivators who attacked at the same time. It was simply a gang attack. In the air, Wang Lu's lazy voice came over. "Sorry, this is our summoning technique. Isn't it awesome to summon more than 10 cultivators at once?" "Summon your mom." The sect leader was exasperated. He didn't expect that the opposite party, who came from a prestigious sect, would be even more despicable and shameless than a lowly sect. Even ganging up on them was so self-righteous. However, the power of the sword lights that came just now was not ordinary. They were roughly at the foundation establishment stage. Since when did this wisdom sect have so many foundation establishment cultivators? However, he didn't have much time to think because the next round of sword lights came. This time, the sect leader didn't block them head-on. His 7 stars atlas rotated, and 100 meters away, he exchanged places with the stellar accumulation. In a split second, he appeared next to a cultivator who was lying in ambush. That cultivator was horrified. He never thought that the opposite party would get so close to him. He hastily tried to use his sword light to protect his body, but it was too late. Break! The 7 stars sect leader took a step forward and threw out a punch. His Xuedan shone brightly in his jade mansion, condensing a mass of highly condensed magical power into his fist, which then solidly pounded on that wisdom sex cultivator's chest. A translucent ripple flickered on that cultivator's chest, and then it was immediately broken. That cultivator screamed, spurted out blood, and fell down like a soft mud. The 7 stars sect leader was inwardly surprised when he dealt a heavy blow to the opponent. He initially thought that the opponent had a foundation establishment stage cultivation base, so his casual attack could only break the opponent's defense. He didn't expect to have such a result. Speaking of which,
that cultivator's magical technique seemed to be seriously inconsistent with his magical power. However, he didn't have much time to think about it because more than 10 sword lights came from behind him. The sect leader once again moved his 7 stars atlas, and once again, he was able to escape from the sword lights. Taking advantage of the situation, he managed to injure 2 cultivators. This time, after succeeding, the sect leader found out the problem. It turned out that the 10 or so cultivators arranged by Wang Lu were only high-level qi cultivating stage. However, he didn't know how they were able to mobilize several times or even dozens of times more powerful magical power, reaching the level of foundation establishment stage. Although there was a big difference between them and a genuine foundation establishment stage, if they hid at a distance and cast spells, there was no difference between them and a genuine foundation establishment stage cultivator. If not for the 7 stars atlas in his hand, which had the shadow-shifting technique, it would be really difficult to deal with them. However, at the same time, more than 10 qi cultivating stage cultivators were able to increase their cultivation base by 1 level. What kind of method was this? On the other side, the cultivators who were easily crushed by the 7 stars sect leader 7 stars atlas were horrified. Their spiritual energy well tactic was actually broken. In order to deal with the 7 stars sect, Wang Lu mobilized the villagers to build several spiritual energy wells in the nearby area. These wells went deep into the feng shui line and extracted spiritual energy from them, which could greatly enhance their magical power. High-level qi cultivating stage cultivators could directly increase their magical power by 1 level, which was comparable to a high-level qi cultivating stage cultivator. They initially thought that they had the advantage in numbers, and they also practiced several brilliant swordlight techniques in advance. With their array formation, they should be able to cause great trouble to the 7 star sect leader. However, they didn't expect that the power of a shoot-on stage cultivator was far beyond their imagination. If not for the powerful protective effect of the feng shui line spiritual energy, the 7 star sect leader could have easily scattered their souls. TSK, your summoned beasts are really not enough. Enough, you guys can go back. Wang Lu's order was like an amnesty to the cultivators. The 7 star sect leader also stopped his pursuit, not because he was soft-hearted, but because he didn't need to waste his precious magical power on these small fries. However, just as he stopped, a burst of sword light came from all directions. Damn, what's the principle behind this? It was already too late to activate the stellar accumulation. Half of the 7 star sect leader used his sword fingers to block the incoming attack, while the other half relied on his Taoist robe's protective spell to block the incoming attack. Ha ha ha, Mr. Sect Leader. You don't really think that I would announce my command through the public channel through the sound transmission array, right? The sect leader was so angry that he almost cursed out loud. The opposite party had been using the sound transmission technique to talk to him to attract his attention. However, when he gave his orders to his subordinates, he naturally had another channel, which was impossible for him to hear. This was such a simple trick, yet he actually fell for it. In the end, he overestimated his opponent. He thought that since the opposite party came from a prestigious sect, he would have some elegance and character, but unexpectedly, this was just a quagmire fight. However, as a sect leader who struggled at the bottom of the immortal cultivation world, why should he be afraid of a quagmire? Compared to those aloof Wanxian League cultivators, wasn't he the master of this quagmire? Thinking to this, the corner of the 7 star sect leader's mouth revealed a trace of a sneer, and the anxiety in his eyes gradually disappeared. Then, he reversed the 7 stars atlas and decided to no longer hold back his strength. He wanted to crush the opponent with overwhelming power. However, at this time, the 7 stars atlas suddenly violently trembled. The sect leader was inwardly startled, thinking that this was a sign of insufficient magical power. He hastily stimulated the void core in his jade mansion and poured a part of his magical power into the 7 stars atlas. Only then did the vibrations subside, but, looking up at the sky, the sect leader's heart sank. The originally bright moon at this time was actually dim, as if it was covered by a layer of veil, which covered most of the moonlight and the stars. The 7 stars atlas was infinitely marvelous, but the magical power consumption was also quite astonishing. Relying solely on the sect leader to provide the magical power, most of which came from the essence of the moonlight and the power of the stars. The reason why he and Xueqi agreed to meet in the middle of the night was because, under the curtain of the night, the 7 stars atlas would become the incomparably sharp key to victory. However, unexpectedly,
The secret of the Seven Stars Atlas was actually seen through by the opposite party in advance, and even made such a targeted arrangement. In the sect, the secret of the Seven Stars Atlas was only known by the sect leader and a few of the closest elders. It would be hard to believe that there was a traitor among these people. However, there was no other explanation for this scene. "Oh, how's the arrangement of my moon well?" As Wang Lu opened his mouth, from time to time, the surrounding mountain peaks shone with silver brilliance. Looking at it with rapt attention, one could see a unique well that was absorbing the moonlight and starlight from the sky, turning them into clear spring water. Seeing this scene, the sect leader's heart turned even colder. Those moon wells were obviously not built in a hurry. In other words, as early as a long time ago, the most trusted person around him had betrayed him? Don't look like you'll never trust anyone again. You don't need to bribe the people around you to know your little secret. The sect leader sneered, completely not believing it. Wang Lu smiled and said, "Since you can guess that I come from a famous sect, you should know that even if my cultivation base is still shallow, my knowledge and experience are far better than you, a grassroots cultivator who struggles at the bottom. So, don't use your level to figure out my reasoning ability. As early as when I learned that your life-bonded magic weapon was the Seven Stars Atlas, I had already guessed your origin. If I'm not mistaken, it should be the inheritance of the Broken Star Sect, a subordinate sect of the Star Sect. Your core cultivation method should be derived from the art of the Seven Glorious Stars. Later, because the cultivation method was incomplete, you cultivated it and turned it into the art of the Seven Stars. This can be considered as a different path, and it actually supported you to reach the shoot-on stage. Unfortunately, no matter how much you change, you still can't deviate from the original path. As long as you design it according to the art of the Seven Glorious Stars, it will always be close to the mark." The sect leader didn't say a word, but his complexion was livid, because what Wang Lu said was not wrong. This shoot-on-stage cultivator who had been wandering in the immortal cultivation world for many years and experienced countless storms, at this time, finally had a trace of fear. Even if the opponent was a Taoist Master King Pill, his fighting spirit would not be shaken like this. But the feeling of his deepest secret being casually dug out was really not good. However, the shaking of the sect leader's fighting spirit only lasted for a short period of time. A moment later, a cool breeze sprinkled down from his jade mansion, which allowed him to regain his fighting spirit. It was true that a grassroots cultivator, compared to a disciple of a famous sect, had this and that kind of deficiency, but after struggling at the bottom for many years, the only thing that a pampered cultivator could not compare to was their tenacity. He didn't know how many times he had experienced despair like this, but as long as he climbed up, there would always be a way out. No need to talk nonsense. If you really have such a brilliant skill, why do you need to scheme? Release your King Pill's aura, and I will bow my head and admit defeat. Do you think you can release it? The sect leader regained his fighting spirit, and in a clear voice, he said, "Only the weak need to rely on intrigue and tricks, relying on the power of words. You come from a famous and upright sect, so take out the demeanor of a famous and upright sect and fight me fair and square." However, the sect leader's goading method was easily neutralized by someone else. "Okay, as long as you can crawl in front of me, I will give you a chance to challenge me. F***CK, do you have any face?" You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.